We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Hey guys! This is Ruzi and I'm back with part 3 of What If Naruto Was a Simple Teenage Shop Owner. Things aren't always as simple as they seem. Just because he found himself in a new world, Naruto shouldn't have forgotten this. Now he must deal with fallen angels, devils, perverts and God, all while maintaining a relationship and running his store. Things can never be simple for him. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 10. Kaneko loved her boyfriend. She loved his bright, sunny hair. She loved his smile that never seemed to fade away. She loved the positive and carefree attitude he had when it came to life. She loved almost every single thing about the boy. All those feelings had been immediately buried in the girl the second she had began Naruto's training regimen. The blonde had started her off with a grueling set of physical exercises that had left the girl sore in places she had never been sore in. Dragging boulders, thousands of push-ups, miles and miles of running, every single thing the boy could think of was thrown at the girl. This is to strengthen your body, Ko-chan. There's no use in even attempting to learn senjutsu if your body cannot physically handle the power of nature. Naruto had told her as she finished her 12th lap around the perimeter of a clearing with a small boulder strapped onto her back. Normally, she would have been able to finish the exercise without any issues. Unfortunately for the girl, Naruto, in all of his infinite wisdom, had placed something called a resistance seal on her body. Now instead of blazing through the workout with the use of her devil powers, Kaneko struggled to balance herself with the massive rock strapped to her back. After finishing the set of exercises, Kaneko would then be subjected to meditation. Not just any type of meditation but meditation that required her to remain perfectly still. Each time she so much as twitched, she would be bopped on the top of her head by Naruto. The crown of her head had started to get tender after only 10 minutes into the meditation. How in the world did her sporadic boyfriend ever manage to get this down, she would never know. When Naruto had first demonstrated the technique to the girl, he had made it seem too easy. The blonde had simply sat in a crossed-leg position before settling his hands on his knees and inhaling a deep breath. After that, the boy closed his eyes and seemingly froze in place within the same moment. Not even the rising and falling of the boy's chest could be seen as he descended deeper and deeper into his meditative state. He was as still as a tree, completely unmoving as a soft wind blew through the clearing. Seconds after Naruto had started his meditation, Kaneko felt an all too familiar force appear in the clearing. The air grew thick and heavy as nature's hate began to pour from out the plants and grass. The girl had almost fainted when she was exposed to the malice that the clearing contained. It was a thick, ancient feeling of hate that had been built up over centuries of abuse. And all of it was flowing into Naruto. If it wasn't for the fact that Naruto had explicitly warned her to not come in contact with him while he was gathering the natural energy, Kaneko would have immediately ran over and knocked him out of his meditation when she felt the hate. Instead, she watched with a combination of fear and amazement in her eyes as Naruto continued to absorb the chakra, and with it, the hatred. The blonde didn't even offer up a single flinch as he bore the brunt of nature's wrath. The process had continued for a full minute before Naruto had finally opened his eyes from his meditation. And with the opening of his eyes, a new feeling filled the clearing. Kaneko had to hold in a gasp as the same feeling of comfort and peace from before swept over her body. A wave of comfort swept through the clearing, washing over everything it touched. Kaneko was not the only one who was affected as a multitude of animals who had perched themselves around the edge of the clearing slowly came out of their hiding spots in an attempt to experience more of this euphoric feeling. And at the center of this tidal wave of energy was Naruto. One key thing that people don't realize when it comes to using senjutsu is that one must become fully connected with nature when using it. You must accept it, all of its flaws, its imperfections, its hate and its strife. You cannot be selective of what you bring in when you absorb natural chakra. You must be able to take it all. Naruto had spoke to her as he approached her downed form. Kaneko couldn't even focus on the boy's word as the pure, untainted power of nature swept over her. The power was so exhilarating yet calming at the same time. Just being close to it had filled her with so much energy, yet she felt so peaceful at the moment. I didn't feel this when I sensed Kuroka use senjutsu. Kaneko managed to mumble out through her haze of euphoria. Your sister didn't purify the natural chakra. She merely molded and used it for her own personal gain. She was causing more harm to herself than good. As a sage and a senjutsu user, my body acts like a purifier for natural chakra. Instead of just simply taking it in and using it before spitting it back out, my body absorbs the chakra, processes it through my chakra pathway before releasing it in its purer form. What you're feeling right now is a combination of my chakra and the natural chakra absorbed from the earth. Naruto explained to the girl as he took a seat next to her. It seemed like the girl was slowly becoming used to his overwhelming presence as her eyes seemed less glazed over. How are you able to do it? All of that hate. Just being near it makes me almost faint. How can you just put that into your body? Naruto let out a small chuckle at the girl's question, drawing a curious glance from his glance. The blonde then looked up to the sky as he began to speak. I am used to internally dealing with hatred. My world was filled with so much of it. Everyone, from my closest friends to my greatest enemies, was filled with hate. Even I had it within me. So much hate was inside me when I was younger. So much hate for my village, for the people who had scorned me, for the person who ruined my life. I hated them all so much. Kaneko's complete attention was focused on Naruto. The boy's face was turned away from the girl as he continued to stare into the sky. The hate built up. It grew stronger and stronger until it began to affect my life. I started to lose control. I lashed out in anger. I hurt the people who were the closest to me. I had started to become consumed by it. The remorseful tone in the boy's voice had Kaneko hanging on to each word that exited the boy's mouth. While she was well aware of the boy coming from a different world, he had never gone into much detail about it. This was the first time she was able to get details about it. Eventually there came a time where I thought I had to conquer my hate. I had to destroy it, wipe it completely from existence to move on. I wanted it gone. I wanted it to never bother me. I didn't realize just how wrong I was for thinking that. Naruto gently formed his hands into a fist at this. Hate isn't something you get rid of. It doesn't just fade away with time. You have to accept it. All of your emotions, even your hate, make you what you are. You can't pick and choose which ones you want. Accept it all. I use this line of thinking when I'm meditating and absorbing natural chakra. The hatred you feel is a part of the earth. It's been embedded in its core from years of abuse. Acceptance of this hate is the key to properly using natural chakra. Naruto finished as he turned his head to Kaneko. A gentle smile was placed on his lips as his hand settled on Kaneko's. I know you can do this, Ko-chan. You have the will and strength to get through this. A wave of confidence swept through the girl at Naruto's word. With the blonde by her side, she felt like she could do anything. You just let him leave. Do you realize just how big of a security risk this is? He could be wandering through heaven right now. Michael released a low groan as he sunk deep into his chair. The Archangel could already feel a headache forming, and the meeting had only begun 5 minutes ago. As soon as Michael had recovered from his shock in the interrogation room, he had summoned the Council of Archangels. This was a collection of angels who were known for closeness to God and their power that far outmatched any regular angel. Raguel, I understand your frustration, but I assure you that the boy is no longer in heaven. I have already secured the 7th and 6th level personally. Guards posted along the perimeter of levels 5 and below report no sign of the boy. The silver-haired angel known as Raguel let out a sigh as he sat back down his chair. The Archangel of Justice had been livid when he discovered that a foreign entity had invaded heaven and managed to escape right under Michael's nose. While I trust your word, Michael-san, I do not trust the actions of this human. The fact that he managed to break into heaven is very alarming. Even the devils faced a huge amount of difficulty with this task, and this human apparently did it on accident. This is very alarming. The calm voice of Camel reached the ears of each of the archangels. Even with the events surrounding the angels, the bearer of the flaming sword of God maintained a serene air around himself. I have written this boy off as a threat. His mere presence in heaven, even for such a brief period of time, makes his capture a #1 priority. Michael stated, what if it's too late for that? What if the way was in leagues with the devils or our fallen brethren? What if he has already revealed the secrets to breaking into heaven? Maybe instead of prioritizing his capture, we should be preparing for an invasion. Of all the angels, the one who had just spoke looked to be the oldest. The angel's black hair was already showing signs of graying. Wrinkles covered the man's face as a small frown settled on his lips. Aren't you being a bit paranoid, Raphael? He is just a human. The youngest looking of the angels spoke. The child of God had a youthful face with an extremely pale complexion. His eyes were completely black, adding to his strange yet young appearance. You should know just how resilient these humans can be at times, Serial. You see them at their weakest, yet they continue to struggle and cling on to life with the strength of a dragon. Never underestimate the potential of a human. Raphael fired back to the angel of death. Serial's smile disappeared from his face at the older angel's words. If you're finished educating the youngling of the group, I would love to hear you contribute something other than hypothetical situation. Rigel spoke up once again, causing Raphael to shoot a glare at his fellow archangel. The older angel glanced around the meeting room, taking notice that he now had the attention of everyone in the room, before speaking. I advise that we start our search on earth while also splitting the distribution of angels in heaven. We cannot be too careful when it comes with dealing with the humans. We also can't be too zealous in our pursuit. Michael hummed softly at his comrade's proposal as the archangels began to talk amongst each other. Seems like the simplest and most effective method at this moment. At least until we have more information. I'll personally send out the order to start the search on Earth. Raphael, you plan out an advanced border patrol for each of the 7 levels. I want a drawn-out plan on my desk by the end of the day. The rest of you are dismissed. One by one, each of the archangels rose from their seats and left the room, leaving only Michael and Gabriel remaining in the room. The silence between the brother and sister was noticeable as Michael tried his best to avoid the knowing look that he was certain his sister was sending him. The archangel could feel her gaze on the back of his head as he stared at the wall in front of him. Don't even say it, Gabriel. I don't want to hear it. Gabriel chuckled at her brother's words before rising to her feet. At her full height, one could truly appreciate the beauty that God had created. In essence, the woman was the very definition of beautiful. Although her figure was covered by her priestly robes, her face spoke volumes of her attractiveness. The angel's long blonde hair fell down the full length of her back. Her bright blue eyes and large smile gave off a sense of innocence that would warm the heart of even the coldest people. I don't have to say it, Michael. I already know you're embarrassed because you let that boy get away from you. No use in hurting your already damaged pride, brother. The strongest of the archangels began to pout at his sister's words. He caught me off guard. If I had been more prepared, he would have never gotten away. Now I have to run damage control while getting everyone else involved. Gabriel's smile left her face as she sensed the remorseful tone of her brother. The angel made her way to her sibling before gently placing a hand on his shoulder. No one is blaming you, Michael, so you have to stop blaming yourself. The boy escaped and you have to accept that. It's time for you to move on from that and start focusing on other things. We can't have our leader moping around all day. Gabriel's upbeat tone managed to erase the smile frown off her brother's face and replace it with a small smile. You're right, Gabriel. Thank you. You can go now. I need to start preparing myself for these upcoming events. Gabriel offered her brother a large smile along with a short nod before stepping out of the room, leaving Michael alone once again. Once his sister had fully left the room, the smile on Michael's face faded away as the archangel released a heavy sigh. In that moment, the angel looked to have aged 10 years as he sat at the head of the meeting table. How did you do this, Father? How did you deal with the constant pressure and stress of leading a whole nation of angels and humans? I don't know how you did this for so long. Michael muttered to himself as he looked up to the sky. When God had been slain in the war between the 3 factions, it had been unanimously decided that Michael would take over for his father. His closeness with God, his position as commander of the forces of heaven and his overwhelming power made him the prime candidate. When originally presented with the position, Michael had been enthusiastic to take over for his father. He had dreams and aspirations of leading heaven into a new age of advancement and prosperity. He wanted to personally make sure that the legacy of his father's work did not go to waste. That had been ages ago. The enthusiasm and positivity quickly faded as reality struck the archangel. Daily, the blonde had to operate the God system. Hundreds of millions of prayers reached his ears. Some carrying the innocent nature of children while others carried the perverted and depraved nature of heathens who simply used Christianity as an attempt to fuel their own greed. Through the prayers, he heard the worst of humanity's struggle. Death, illness, poverty, greed, violence, every journey into the God system reminded him just how much humanity suffered. As if dealing with the strifes of humanity weren't bad enough, Michael also had to deal with the everyday details of life in heaven. Food, clothing and other supplies weren't an issue in God's domain. It was the rate at which angels were fallen that alarmed the archangel. Every single week, a folder would be set on Michael's desk that contained the name, history, and abilities of each angel that fell due to sin. Some weeks, the folder was thin, something that Michael had started to savor when it came. Other times, the folder would be as thick as the book of Jeremiah. Wherever you are, Father, I hope you're watching over us. I feel that your blessing in this time of change would benefit us greatly. Unfortunately, we must push forward without it. I know you wouldn't want us to give up. We can't afford to anymore. God damn it, Shemhaz, I said I was sorry. Azazel yelled as he ducked under a spear of light. The spear exploded in a brilliant display of light that glowed a dark blue. Each spark emitted from the light spear left a small trail in the air. Azazel had no time to enjoy the light show as he continued to run from his pursuer. Sorry doesn't cut it, Azazel. I'm getting tired of your antics. Azazel's pursuer yelled as the man looked to be charging up another attack. The fellow fallen angel took the appearance of a young man who looked to be around his mid-20s. The man had a long mane of white hair that flowed freely down his back. His scarlet eyes were narrowed in righteous fury at his longtime friend. The man was dressed in a blue trench coat that allowed his 10 jet-black wings to flutter freely behind him. I told you that I tried to get him to stay. Azazel yelped as he dived to the ground, just in time to avoid another light spear from his friend. The fallen angel started to climb to his feet but was interrupted when Shemhazai's foot slammed into the side of his head, sending him collapsing back to the ground. We gave you one job. One simple, little job and you couldn't even do that. You're our leader, for Christ's sake. Shemhazai threw up his hands in frustration as he walked away from his downed friend and technically boss body. The leader of the Grigori let out a pitiful moan as he clutched onto his head while climbing to his feet. If you're done playing around with the idiot, I think it's time for us to get down to business. Another man spoke as he emerged from the shadows. This man was middle-aged with short black hair and a matching beard. His muscular body could be seen through the red overcoat he wore. I'm sorry, Bara, but this idiot's actions just piss me off sometimes. How are we even still friends after all these years? Shemhazai muttered while walking over to one of the 3 empty seats that surrounded the dark oak wood table that sit in the middle of the living room. The older man followed his friend's lead and took a seat next to him while Azazel hobbled over to the last empty chair. Look, I'm sorry guys, but this wasn't some ordinary human. He had to be the descendant of a hero. He managed to keep up with me. He beat me. He could have killed me if he wanted to. Azazel exclaimed wildly to his 2 best friends. The 2 men in front of him looked at the friend before sighing simultaneously. Why didn't he kill you then? Any normal person, human, devil, angel or fallen angel, would have retaliated against the person who attacked them. Heracles questioned the fallen angel. That's the thing. I don't think he was part of any faction, even the hero one. I was suspicious of what ties he had when he turned down my offer, but I'm convinced that he is a loner now. He seemed ignorant to some of the common knowledge that I know is shared between the factions. He didn't kill me because there was no reason for him to. He was confident in his ability to handle me, so to him, me attacking him was only a minor annoyance, not an actual threat. Azazel explained to the 2 men. Heracles let out a thoughtful hum as Shemhazai's frown deepened. An unknown entity with a great enough power that it attracted the attention of Ophis. For all we know, he could be wrapped around that goody 2-shoes finger. Or he could be Ophis' lapdog. God damn it, I hate not knowing. Shemhazai slammed his fist onto the oak table, causing it to shake violently. I understand your anger, but we must remain calm. Reacting in anger will only hinder us. Cool heads will prosper in this situation. Heracles said while directing his stare at Shemhazai. The spirited fallen angel let out a loud groan as he collapsed back into his seat. He knew that his friend was right. He also knew that uncertainty and unknowns could lead to his death, something Shemhazai was not particularly looking forward to. I don't think we have as much to fear than you may think. Azazel's words caught Shemhazai and Barakil attention. The boy, for the lack of a better word, seemed carefree, almost uncaring to a certain extent. Plus it seemed he could handle himself. I doubt that Michael would be able to sway him to his side. If he did engage with Ophis like he had planned, I doubt that he would willingly go along with the girl. Best case scenario, he is dead and out the picture. Either way, there is nothing that we can do in this situation, so there's no point in stressing about it. Azazel punctuated his statement by kicking his feet up on the table and leaning back in his chair. Silence quickly filled the room as the trio of friends sat together. That silence was quickly interrupted by a loud yelp from Azazel as the man was forced to dodge yet another one of Shemhazai's spear. The Grigori leader quickly lost balance and found his face reunited with the ground once again. Stop being so casual about the situation, damn it. This is serious. We can't just sit back and do nothing. There is still a chance he is alive, and there is a chance that he could be plotting against us right now. We must act accordingly to these risks. Shemhazai yelled while Barakil nodded his head in agreement. Azazel shakingly picked himself up from the ground with the help of the table while glaring at his best friends. You could have told me that without throwing a spear at my face. You need to learn how to communicate with your words, Shemch. Azazel quickly ducked underneath the table just in time to avoid another light spear. The fallen angel quickly popped his head up and began to blow raspberries at the man. His childish actions were quickly put to rest as a weakened but faster version of a light spear slammed into his face, courtesy of Barakil. Both of you shut up and act your own age. Barakil said as he stood from his seat. Since you seem incapable of governing the Grigori and assisting with this issue at the same time, Shem and I will handle it. Azazel raised his head from back under the table to shoot the man a small nod before ducking back underneath the furniture in fear of being attacked once again. Shemhazai rolled his eyes at his friend's behavior before standing from his own seat. Try not to mess anything else up. Also, be sure to continue to watch over Kokabil. He has been oddly silent over the past couple of weeks. Azazel's head briefly popped up again to give his friend a nod before retreating once more. Shemhazai sighed at the man's behavior, calling him an idiot under his breath, before disappearing from the room in a flutter of feathers. Barakil offered his concealed friend a final farewell before doing the same, leaving his best friend to stay hidden under the table for another full hour. The fallen angel was fearful that his friends were just waiting for him to pop his head up to nail him with a light spear. Fear was a powerful thing, even for a fallen angel. Naruto watched with a small smile on his face as his girlfriend disappeared from his sight in a bright flash of red light. The two had been training for the better part of the day and had made great progress, at least when it came to senjutsu. The girl still hadn't managed to hold still for longer than half a second, and Naruto could still sense the trepidation in her body whenever she made an attempt at it. The two had been on the verge of a breakthrough when Kaneko had been summoned by her master. Kaneko, aware of how Rias was feeling, had apologized to him as she felt that she had to answer the summons. Naruto had waved off the apology and kissed the girl goodbye. Once the Nekasha had left the clearing, Naruto disappeared from the forested area and reappeared on the front door step of his house. The blonde placed his hand on the door handle, the knob glowing a light blue as the seal implanted on it recognized his fingerprints. The handle let out a soft click, signaling it was unlocked, just before Naruto pushed it open. The blonde then stepped into the house before quickly closing the door. As Naruto was locking the door, a sharp whistle blew through the air. The shinobi casually tilted his head to the side just as a fist buried its way into the wall behind where his head was only a second ago. The owner of the fist seemed had a fair skin tone with a petite frame, if their wrist and forearm were anything to go by. I just got this place cleaned up. Don't go around and destroy it again. Naruto was forced to duck as his intruder attempted to take his head off with an overhead kick. The attack sailed harmlessly over his head but unfortunately landed up hitting his door, shattering the poor thing into thousands of wooden shards. Naya, you deserve to die for trying to teach Kaneko senjutsu. The now revealed Kuroka yelled as she stood in the opening of Naruto's house. The woman's usually beautiful face was twisted into a harsh scowl as she stared at Naruto. Her tail was waving around erratically behind her, showing just how agitated she truly was. So you attacked me? I'm just trying to help her. Naruto yelled back at the girl. The Nekasha seemed to pay his words no attention as she rocketed towards Naruto. The devil crossed the distance between the two in the blink of an eye with her fist raised, ready to attack. When she got within range, the girl unleashed her punch, straight into Naruto's awaiting hand, to her utter dismay. With his grip on her fist, Naruto pulled on the girl's body, throwing her off balance. With the girl off balance, Naruto grabbed onto her forearm and twisted his body along with hers, then releasing Kuroka's arm and sending the girl flying across the room. The agile feline quickly recovered from the throw and landed on her feet in the middle of the living room, her scowl still present. Do you know what Senjutsu can do to you? You call that helping? You're going to kill her. Kuroka yelled as she leaped at Naruto once again, her claws protruding out of her fist as she prepared to rip Naruto's throat out. Unfortunately for the Nekasha, the blonde was too quick for her and sidestepped her attack once again, angering the girl even more. Why do you use it then? You're being a giant hypocrite right now. Naruto yelled back at the girl as she pressed her assault. That's because I can control it. She's not ready yet. You're going to ruin her. The girl's anger became more intense as wisps of Yujutsu began to creep into the girl's attacks. You just can't stop yourself from attracting trouble, can ya? Kurama questioned as his container dodged the flurry of punches, swipes, and kicks that were being aimed at him. Naruto released a silent scoff as he continued to dance around the Nekasha's attacks. It wouldn't be a normal day if I didn't have some type of excitement in my life. Naruto punctuated this statement by spinning around a particular vicious jab that would have most likely punctured his neck if he allowed it to hit him. Well, I recommend that you end the excitement a bit early. She can start drawing on natural chakra at any second, and I don't think you want to spend another day repairing your house. Naruto nodded at his partner's advice before refocusing his full attention on the raging bull of a girl in front of him. Sit still and let me carve out your face, Naya. Kuroka screamed as she continued to swipe at Naruto. The stupid blonde just wouldn't sit still long enough for her to land an attack on. Just when she thought she had caught him off guard, he would always manage to somehow dodge. It was beyond frustrating. Now why would I do that? I haven't done anything wrong. With that comment, the girl saw red as she prepared to draw on her senjutsu and tear the teen a new asshole. Fortunately for Naruto, she would never have the chance to do that. Kuroka released a loud gasp when she felt a hard pressure slam onto the back of her neck. The girl's vision started to quickly change to black as her consciousness faded from her. The Nekasha, realizing this, leveled one last glare at the boy before falling unconscious. The clone standing behind Kuroka caught the girl's falling body before it could slam to the ground. Naruto offered his Kobe a small nod as it carried the girl over to the couch. The clone would apply several chakra and movement suppression seal to the Nekasha in order to make sure she didn't try to tear the boy's throat out when she woke up. Well, that's taken care of for now. Not looking forward to when she wakes up. Naruto muttered to himself as his clone dispersed itself. There's also the fact that you don't have a door anymore. You may want to deal with that. Fuck. Chapter 11. Panic filled Kuroka as soon as her senses started to return to her. It was a type of panic that she hadn't felt since she was a young child. A fear born from being powerless and helpless. This was what Kuroka felt when she awakened and realized she couldn't feel her demonic energy flowing through her body. The Nekasha rose from the couch she was situated on, her eyes filled with caution as she scanned the room. A sense of realization slowly crossed the girl's face as she recognized the place as the living room of the teenage boy she assaulted yesterday. The fear she was feeling quickly turned into anger as an angry scowl formed on her face. When I see that bastard, I swear I'm going to mutilate his genitals. The young woman muttered to herself as she began to examine the rest of the room. She had been rather agitated during her visit last night, so she never got a chance to truly observe the room. For a teenager living on himself, the place was surprisingly clean. Any damage that the girl may have done last night seemed to have been repaired as everything looked to be in working order. A small couch sat next to the one she had been laying on through the night. A mid-sized TV stood in direct view of both of the couches. A small coffee table sat within arm's length of the couches as well. The door that she was sure had splintered under her kick had been replaced with another one. Kuroka made her way out of the living room and into the adjacent kitchen. The cooking area was rather small. It contained a compact oven that was alongside a microwave. The sink was directly next to the oven and a small amount of dirty dishes could be seen in it. All of the cabinets were closed, but if one knew Naruto, they would be able to assume that they were filled with ramen. And their assumption would be 100% right. That lazy bastard is probably still asleep. Kuroka mumbled to herself as she made her way out of the kitchen. The Nekashu quickly found the hallway leading to the master bedroom and began to follow it. As she walked down the hallway, the pictures hanging along its walls caught her attention. Some of the images looked to be pictures of the blonde when he was younger along with some other kids. Some of those pictures showed the blonde alongside a pink-haired girl, a dark-haired boy and an older, silver-haired man. The other pictures showed the blonde standing beside a variety of other kids and adults. The thing that really caught Kuroka's attention were the weird symbols that were either carved onto the wall's surface or were being held up by a picture frame. The symbols contained the complexity of the clan seals that the devils used to identify their heritage. At random intervals, the seals would glow a light blue, making the house seem almost alive. Kuroka's observation came to an end as she found herself in front of the door she assumed to be the master bedroom. The feline woman pressed her ear against the door, her ears straining to catch any indication that the blonde was awake. When her sensitive hearing picked up no sounds, she withdrew her head from the door and quietly opened the door. Kuroka ignored the interior of the room as she made her way over to the large covered-up lump sitting in the middle of the bed. Her steps were quiet, almost soundless, as she approached her target. Her claws began to slide from out of her hands as she stood over the bed. Her scowl morphed into a twisted grin as she raised her hands into the air in preparation for her attack. "Die, you bastard!" Kuroka yelled as she began to slash and swipe at the bedding. Her sharp nails cut right through the blankets and descended into the lump underneath. Cotton and fluff were thrown into the air as Kuroka continued to assault the bed for a full minute before finally pulling back, clearly out of breath. The girl observed her handiwork, a smile on her face until she noticed the distinct lack of blood or screams coming from her victim. In a wild haste, the Nekasha ripped the blankets off of her supposed victim. To the girl's horror, the lump underneath the ruined covers was not the blonde who had knocked her out. Instead, it was a large pile of pillows that were arranged to resemble the shape of the boy. Laying on top of these pillows, strangely unharmed by Kuroka's assault, was a small note written in the blonde's handwriting. "Hey! Glad you came to wake me up, but by the time you're reading this, I'll most likely be gone for the day. I'll be back later in the day, so just make yourself comfortable. P.S. The collar around your neck restricts you from leaving the house, so you should try to not break out during the day." Kuroka read out loud before glancing down at her neck, noting that there was indeed a collar on her. The girl reached up to tug at the collar and in return received a small shock for her actions. "I'm going to kill him when I see him," Kuroka thought to herself as she approached the window of the room. The girl reached down to pull open the window and was awarded with a stronger shock, this one actually sending her to the ground. "I hate that bastard!" The girl yelled as she began to claw and strike wildly at everything around her. It looked like Naruto was going to have to be doing some more repairs when he got home. "You have a wonderful day," Naruto said with a smile on his face as he handed a customer a small bag of sweets. The young woman offered him a sweet smile before taking the bag and walking out of the store. Another customer satisfied. "This day can't get any better," Naruto exclaimed loudly, drawing the attention of the customers that were sitting in his shop. The weird looks being thrown at him forced a nervous laugh out of the blonde as he muttered a weak apology to his guest. Naruto's laughter was quickly stolen from him when he felt a familiar presence enter his sensor range. The presence was walking towards his shop at a sedate pace, its energy as dark as before. The blonde quickly made sure no customers were waiting for him to serve them before moving into the back room. Situated in the back room of the shop was, surprisingly, another Naruto. This Naruto was sat in the middle of a large, glowing ceiling array, his upper body exposed to the world. The blonde was settled in a meditative position, his breathing calm and controlled as he sucked in air methodically. "Boss, I think you'll want to take this personally." Naruto's eyes snapped open at his clone's words. The glowing of the seal slowly faded away as the blonde rose to his feet. "Yeah, I felt it as well. You can go ahead and dispel yourself. I'm pretty sure I can handle this myself." The clone offered its creator a nod before dispersing in a small cloud of smoke. With his clone gone, Naruto retrieved his shirt, placing the piece over himself, then placing an apron over top of it. The blonde then placed a large smile on his face before stepping back out into the shop's interior. "Lucifer-san. It's so nice to see you again. Come to lose more of your money to me?" Naruto cheekily asked the red-headed man who was dressed in a black tuxedo. The carefree attitude the man usually had was gone as a nervous expression replaced it. The man was fidgety, constantly looking around the shop while tugging at his collar. No, not today at least. I came to talk about something important. Sirzechs' nervousness showed in his voice as it pitched up and down randomly. Sure. Not a problem for an old friend. Lay it on me. Naruto leaned his elbows onto the table while shooting the man an expectant look. Sirzechs took a hard gulp as he scanned the room once more before returning his focus back to Naruto. Can't we go somewhere a bit more private? It's really, really important. I don't want anyone overhearing anything they shouldn't know. Naruto hummed thoughtfully for several seconds before gesturing to the customers sat at the bar beside him. Anything you can say in front of me, you can say in front of my customers. There's a little thing in this establishment that we share called trust. If possible, Sirzechs appeared to become more nervous. The man was noticeably sweating at this point, constantly having to wipe at his forehead and face. It's really, really, really important. Please let's go somewhere more private. Sirzechs all but begged the boy. The desperation in his voice was apparent as the man looked as if he wanted to scream for help. I don't know. Naruto trailed off while leaning his head on his chin. The devil looked to be close to tears at the boy's response. Stop teasing the man and just listen to what he has to. I don't feel like watching a grown man cry today. Kurama commented, earning an internal chuckle from the blonde. Naruto decided to stop torturing the man and begun to take off his apron. Follow me. That was Naruto's only command before he disappeared into the back of the shop. The devil's face morphed into one of happiness at the sudden change of heart. Sirzechs quickly hopped over the counter, completing foregoing the employee's entrance before dashing into the back of the shop. Anger. That's what Ophis had been feeling for the past few hours. That seemed to be all that the girl felt ever since she encountered the blonde. The boy frustrated more than anyone had ever done before. Even the Great Red hadn't struck a nerve this badly with her. When the girl had finally finished her fight with the Great Red, she had been fully prepared to capture the boy. While her energy had been somewhat depleted by her skirmish with the dragon, she was more than eager to capture the annoying blonde. That's why when the girl had turned and discovered that the blonde had escaped from her once again, the girl had become filled with rage. In hindsight, it should have been rather obvious that the boy wouldn't just sit still and wait for her to finish her petty squabble. That didn't stop her from feeling angry. A large section of the dimensional rift had been faced her wrath on that day due to her anger. Now though, Ophis was calm. Calm mixed with righteous anger but still calm. Her temper tantrum had managed to clear away most of her anger. She was now able to think with a clear mind. Her clear mind was one of the reasons that she was able to endure the pig-headed man standing behind her. Heracles was a muscular man, clearly taking after his ancestor. He stood at an intimidating 6 foot 6 inches, towering over most people she encountered. His muscular frame was only covered by a simple loincloth that shielded his crotch area from the world. A simple club was slung over the man's shoulder, seemingly being his weapon of choice. Why'd you summon me, girl? I have more important things to deal with, so whatever it is, let's just make it quick. Heracles said to the god's back. The man's flippant attitude was a clear sign of disrespect to the god, something that Ophis took notice of. Heracles quickly found himself unable to speak as a black snake constricted around his neck. The snake originated from under Ophis' dress, showing that the girl was in control of the creature. The snake had its fang aimed at the man's neck, ready to end its prey's life. While you are in my presence, you will not speak, as I have grown beyond tired of your insolence. The next words you utter out your mouth while I'm around will be your last. Do you understand? Heracles raised his hands to tear the snakes from his neck. Sensing the man's intention, the snake plunged its fangs into Heracles' neck, forcing a loud scream out of him. The snake slowly uncoiled itself from the man's neck before slithering back towards its creator. I have injected your body with some of my power. It should prove to be a substantial boost to your dismal reserves. If you do not bring me the blonde within a week, I will rot your body from the inside out. Now fetch me Naruto Uzumaki. He is located in the town of Kuo. Return with the boy or return to your death. Ophis turned her back on the man as a bright light consumed his body. Without a say in the matter, the descendant of Hercules disappeared from the dimensional rift. You'll see me soon, Uzumaki. For now I must rest. I know now that you require my full strength, and I will not allow you to escape me once more. You want me to bake you a cake? When the leader of the underworld had stepped into his shop, Naruto had suspected a lot of things to happen. Although he was unaware of the men's title, he was still aware of the body the man had. He had already encountered the fallen angels and the angels, so the blonde could safely assume that this man was a devil. Plus his relationship with the Rias girl and Kaneko sort of gave it away. That was why Naruto had been prepared to fight. He had at least expected the redhead to at least threaten him, even if it was only verbally. But when the man had broken down and begged him for a cake, Naruto had been caught off guard. Yes, a cake. A white chocolate cake to be exact. Sirzechs said. Naruto stared at the man's face for several seconds, searching for any signs of deceit. The request was so ridiculous and out of nowhere that it was hard for the blonde to take the man seriously. May I ask why you need a white chocolate cake? And why did you come to me of all people? It doesn't make much sense to me. A guilty look crossed Sirzechs' face as he looked away from the teen. It was the first time Naruto had seen the man display an emotion other than happiness, nervousness, or stupidity. Well, the person who I would usually go to isn't exactly the happiest with me. And I've heard some good things about your desserts from Kaneko. Naruto took notice of the change of subject, marking it down in his head for a later date. You do realize why I'm a bit skeptical about this? You were just trying to buy my shop only a week ago. How do I know that you won't claim I poisoned you or something while trying to ruin my business? Uzumaki-san, please. I need your help. You don't realize how important this is to M. Sirzechs' begging was put to a rest as a small ringing reached his and Naruto's ears. The shinobi gestured for the man to remain where he was before quickly rushing to the front of the shop. To the boy's pleasant surprise, the person who greeted him at the counter was none other than his girlfriend. The girl's bookbag was slung over her shoulder as her hand rested on the small silver bell that was on his counter. Nico-chan, I didn't expect to see you. Aren't you supposed to be in school? The smile that had appeared on the boy's face when he recognized her brought a great joy to Kaneko's heart. Knowing that her boyfriend felt that happy just from seeing her made the girl ecstatic. School was let out early. Apparently, Sona-san managed to convince the administration to give us a half-day. Kaneko stated. Naruto nodded at her words and looked as if he was about to speak but was interrupted by another voice. Kaneko-chan, it's nice to see you. Naruto shot the red-headed devil an annoyed glance as the man exited the backroom of the shop, making his presence known to the Nekashu. The low-class devil looked in between the two men, confusion clear in her eyes. Her eyes settled on Sirzechs first, her confusion switching to slight irritation. What are you doing here for Gremory-san? Sirzechs' face quickly took on a mask of panic as he began to wave his hands around frantically in front of his face. It's nothing bad, I swear. Rias did not send me here to hurt or threaten Naruto-san. The skepticism in Kaneko's eyes made it clear to the man that she didn't believe a single word, causing him to sigh. Graphia is pretty angry with me. Kaneko's skepticism immediately disappeared as it was replaced with a look of understanding. While Graphia was known as the loyal maid of the Gremory house and the even more loyal wife of Sirzechs, the woman had the man on a very tight leash. His schedule, his work and even some of his actions were regulated by the woman. Kaneko knew this, Rias knew this and almost of the underworld knew this. Sirzechs was indeed a strong man, but even he knew that he didn't exactly wear the pants in the relationship. That's why when Graphia had returned from visiting Rias, her anger clear to the world, Sirzechs knew he had messed up. The maid hadn't even addressed him, choosing to head straight to the catch to get started on her maid duties. Sirzechs knew just from her actions that the meeting had gone bad, his fear being confirmed when he received a call from Akino who explained to him how the meeting had gone. When the queen had told him that Riser had attacked Rias' peerage, the devil had wanted to teleport to the Phoenix compound and burn it all to the ground. A couple hundred years ago, he was sure he would have went ahead and actually gone through with the idea. Years of training and responsibility, however, had taught him better. That didn't mean the situation didn't upset Sirzechs. He knew that even though Graphia was only Rias' sister-in-law, the maid treated the girl as if she was her actual sister. Graphia had looked after the little girl since her birth. To see the girl she raised be in pain must have struck hard at the woman's heart. It must have hurt the woman even more considering her husband was the one who signed off on the thing that was causing her the pain. When Sirzechs originally agreed to the marriage contract, Rias had been just a baby. He hadn't gotten to know the girl that he would grow to love more than almost anything else in the world. His focus wasn't on her betterment but on the betterment of the clan. It was a line of thinking that he regretted ever having. If he had known just how much his sister would mean to him, he would have never gone through with it. If he had known Riser's true nature, he would have said fuck the clan and ripped up the paper as soon as it touched his desk. Unfortunately, he hadn't done that and now had to live with the guilt of knowing he potentially doomed his little sister to an eternity with Riser Phoenix. In his guilt, he had managed to negotiate a rating game between the two in an attempt to at least give the girl a fighting chance. But even he knew that was nowhere near enough to appease for his mistakes. I understand. What do you plan on getting her? A small smirk appeared on Sirzechs' face as he slid Naruto a sly glance. I planned on ordering a cake from your boyfriend over here, but he was being very inconsiderate. You wouldn't mind helping me convince him, right, Kaneko-chan? Mentally, Sirzechs was doing a dance in his head as he finally found a way to get his cake. He knew that Kaneko-chan would stick up for him and come to his rescue. Yes, I do mind. Deal with your own problems, Sirzechs Baka. Stop trying to drag Naruto-kun into it. Sirzechs' dance came to a screeching halt at the girl's cold response. The man was frozen in shock as Kaneko hopped over the counter and propped herself on a stool beside Naruto, pushing past the Satan in the process. Kaneko. Naruto. The couple glanced at the red-headed man as he slowly began to turn towards them. To their surprise, tears could be seen in his eyes as his bottom lip quivered wildly. You guys are both so mean. The man yelled, catching the attention of everyone in the shop as the redhead collapsed to the ground. A river of tears began to exit the man's eyes as he continued to wail out loudly on the floor. Both Naruto and Kaneko watched the devil convulse and cry on the floor with a mixture of disgust and even more disgust. This type of behavior was unfitting for a man. It was even more unfitting for the supposed strongest devil in the underworld. Naruto-kun. Kaneko called out to her boyfriend as she watched the man continue to cry. Yeah, Ko-chan. Naruto couldn't tear his eyes away from the man, even to respond. His actions had just been so sudden and unexpected that it caught the blonde completely off guard. Just bake him the cake. I think some of your customers are starting to get freaked out. Naruto finally managed to look away from the crying grown man in order to inspect the people in his shop. Just as Kaneko said, they were all looking at the trio with creeped out expressions on their faces. Fine, I'll bake him a cake as long as he stops crying. Like a switch had been flipped, the tears coming out of Sirzechs stopped as the man hopped to his feet. A large smile was on the man's face as he sprinted over to Naruto and wrapped the teen in a giant bear hug. You have no idea how happy you just made me, Sirzechs said as he swung Naruto back and forth in the air. The sage allowed the man to hold him for a couple of seconds before pushing him, forcing the redhead to drop him to the ground. As much as I enjoy this touching feeling, I need to be on the ground in order to make the cake. You can come back by the end of the day and it should be ready. Sirzechs shot the boy an understanding nod before hopping his way back over the counter. Thank you once again, Naruto-kun. I owe you big time. The man yelled, his loud voice carrying through the shop, once again catching the customer's attention, before he ran out the door. Naruto and Kaneko watched the man sprint down the streets of Kuo and eventually disappear around a corner. That is one very strange man. You have no idea just how right you are. Why is this so difficult? Kaneko asked herself as she nursed the abused crown of her head. The girl was sat in the middle of the clearing that she had started to call the Hell Circle due to her experiences in it. A half moon was high in the sky, providing the girl with a small amount of light during her training. It's difficult because you're making it difficult. How do you expect to use this power if you have so much fear of it? Naruto was sat directly beside the girl. The blonde was dressed modestly in a t-shirt with the Uzumaki seal painted on it and a pair of shorts. His spiky hair waved softly from side to side as a slight wind blew through the clearing. It's not as simple as just not being afraid anymore. I was taught since I was a child that senjutsu was bad. You can't just expect me to just change that opinion overnight. Kaneko snapped at Naruto, earning her a raised eyebrow from the boy. The Nekasha took a deep breath before muttering soft apology to the boy, the frustrations of the day clearly getting to her. You don't have to apologize, Ko-chan, I understand your frustration. I went through the same thing when I was first learning. I don't expect you to get this overnight. This is a very hard and dangerous technique that my own master wasn't even able to complete. Don't expect to get this down immediately. Kaneko lowered her head as she balled her fist up. I need to get it down soon though. I need this edge in order to make a difference in the rating game. I need this. Naruto could see the girl was beginning to shake slightly due to her anger. A small frown crossed the boy's face as he watched his girlfriend struggle in her anger. He knew the internal struggle the girl was going through and it hurt him to watch her. So he decided to do something about it. Kaneko was snapped out of her pity party when she felt a strong pair of hands wrapped around her midsection. Before she could even acknowledge what was happening, the girl found herself in the air for a brief second before being placed into her boyfriend's lap. All of the tension left her body when she felt her boyfriend's hand land on her scalp. Without her even noticing, her Nekashu ears revealed themselves to the world. The girl seemed to melt into the blonde's lap as he scratched at the girl's ears. A gentle purr began to emit from her throat as she succumbed to her boyfriend's ministrations. After Naruto had discovered that Kaneko had cat ears and a tail, the boy was immediately drawn to them. When they were together alone, he would spend hours just playing with them, driving the girl to euphoria with each session. Naruto had quickly discovered the effect his actions had on the devil and quickly started to abuse his powers. Whenever the Nekashu found herself frustrated or agitated with the blonde, he would quickly begin to rub her head or tail. She hated to admit it, but she couldn't stay mad at the boy longer after he finished. "Stop distracting me," Kaneko managed to force out while under the effects of her boyfriend's hands. Naruto ignored the girl as her tail slowly wiggled its way out from under her pants and into his lap. The boy's free hand immediately latched onto the appendage, causing the girl to freeze in his lap. A blissful sigh exited her mouth as the blonde's hand ran up and down her tail. "You need some distraction right now. You're worrying yourself too much," Naruto spoke while focusing his attention on her tail and ears. The boy could see that the girl was getting consumed by her training and he knew where that could lead her. So he decided to end the problem before it began and distract the girl with some good old ear scratching. The sweet moment between the couple was ruined when a violent quake ripped through the ground unexpectedly. Naruto's hands left Kaneko's body as his head snapped towards the tree line of the clearing. "What is that?" Kaneko said as she stood from her boyfriend's lap. Naruto was already up to his feet, his eyes searching, continuously scanning Realign as the earth began to shake more frequently and violently. "I just can't catch a break," Naruto muttered to himself, catching Kaneko's attention as the earth shook once again. Everything went quiet for several seconds, sending the two teens on edge as they waited something to happen. The two didn't have to wait for long as a loud yelling reached their ears. Naruto's head shot up towards the sky and his immediately eyes locked onto the human shape that was speeding through the air towards the duo. The shape seemed to be the source of the noise as it grew louder as the figure grew closer. Within seconds, the man slammed into the clearing, cracking the ground beneath him as he landed in a crouch. The man released a dark chuckle as he rose to his full height of an impressive 2 meters with a wooden club in hand. The man's body looked to have been sculpted from rock as it was covered in a mountain of muscles. The man's brown locks reached down to his shoulder while his piercing green eyes contained a hungry look. His veins were pulsing a sickening green beneath his skin, tipping Naruto off that this man was indeed not normal. "I presume you are Naruto Uzumaki?" the man asked while leveling his club at the boy. Naruto gave the man a short nod while Kaneko looked in between the two. The club wielder released a booming laugh while shouldering his weapon. "Good. I was beginning to think this would take long, but now that I've found you, this should be quick." The man lifted his foot up in the air before sending it crashing down into the ground, cracking and splintering it even more. "Ophis wants you and I'm going to drag you back to her, no matter what it takes." "Ophis? As in the mythical dragon god, Ophis?" Naruto released a nervous chuckle at his girlfriend's question, internally attempting to come up with a way to worm his way of the situation. Fortunately for the blonde, his explanation would be put on a slight hold as the muscular man took off charging towards him. "I came to fight, not talk," the man yelled as he charged at the blonde. Naruto was almost impressed at the speed the man possessed considering his massive form. He hadn't seen someone so large move that fast since A or B. Unfortunately for the descendant of Hercules, he was still nowhere near fast enough to match the blonde. Naruto was caught off guard when he saw a white blur shoot past him as the man approached him. The blur, who Naruto quickly deduced to be Kaneko, met the half-naked man halfway through his charge and planted a heavy haymaker into the man's stomach, stopping him in his tracks. You dare touch me?" the man muttered as he looked down at the Nekashu. An angry scowl had replaced the man's confident look as his eyes locked onto his assaulter. Kaneko stood in shock at the fact that her punch hadn't affected the man. She had put the entirety of her strength behind that one and he didn't even flinch. No one touches the great Heracles. Especially not a little girl like you. The man screamed. Before Kaneko knew it, the man had raised his club from his shoulder and had it inches away from her skull. Kaneko, realizing that she could not move away fast enough to avoid the hit, quickly prepared herself to take the hit. Fortunately for the girl's health, Heracles was stopped midway through his swing when he felt a hard force slam into his cheek. The man was lifted from his feet as his club was sent flying out of his hand. His body was sent flying through the air, eventually crashing into one of the trees that made up the edge of the clearing. Are you okay? Kaneko lifted her head from the ground in order to look up at the voice. Naruto stood protectively over her body, his fist outstretched from his last attack. Her eyes immediately locked onto the orange pigmentation that surrounded the boy's eyes. Your eyes. Naruto looked confused for a brief second before slapping himself in the head once he realized what the girl was talking about. This happens whenever I am in sage mode. It's a byproduct of me working alongside toads during my training. Kaneko nodded her head as she examined the boy's body. The calming feeling she had felt earlier was now back in full force as it literally spilt out from the blonde. Just being in his presence made the girl feel safe. So this is how sage mode is supposed to feel in action. Kaneko muttered as her eyes stayed locked onto the blonde. Naruto watched as Heracles pushed away the tree that had fallen onto him. If the man had been angry before, he was absolutely living now. You dare harm me? I'll tear you apart for defiling my greatness. The man shouted before running at the pair. Kaneko tensed as she prepared to take off at the man again but was halted when Naruto's hand landed on her shoulder. The blonde looked down at the girl and offered her a small smile. Just sit back and watch, Ko-chan. I'm going to show you what you can really do when using natural chakra the right way. The girl could do nothing but nod as the boy turned back to the charging man. Just as Kaneko had done, Naruto decided to meet the man halfway. The blonde was nothing but a blur to both the Nekashu and the hero as he crossed the distance between the two within the blink of an eye, appearing in a crouch right in front of the man. Heracles had no time to react as Naruto spun and sent his foot crashing into the man's midsection, shattering his ribs on impact. Blood was sent rocketing out of the man's mouth as his broken ribs tore into his organs. The man was offered no rest as Naruto grabbed onto his head, stopping the man from reaching the ground, before slamming it down into the earth. The boy lifted the man's head several inches up before viciously slamming it back into the ground. The blonde repeated this process for several seconds before grabbing onto Heracles with both of his hands and sending the man flying high into the air. The boy then went through a small chain of hand signs before inhaling a deep breath and unleashing a massive wind bullet at the airborne man. The bullet slammed into the Heracles, ripping into the man's body as he was sent flying out of sight. Don't you think that was a bit unnecessary? Kurama asked as he watched through Naruto's eyes as Heracles' figure disappeared over the horizon. He tried to hurt Kaneko. He deserved every last bit of it. Naruto said sharply. The boy gave off a satisfied sigh then turned around only to meet eyes with a rather agitated Kaneko. You have a lot of explaining to do, Naruto-kun. Super spicy make. Naruto released an exhausted groan as he stepped into his house, closing the newly repaired door shut behind him. The boy had just spent the past several hours explaining to Kaneko how a dragon god wanted to take control of his body and use it to fight a gigantic red dragon. The girl had been rather upset when she had discovered all of this. He had to spend a full hour trying to calm the girl, of course after receiving several hits to the head that were emphasized by Kaneko yelling baka with each hit. Today has been such a long day. The boy muttered out loud to himself as he flicked the lights on in his home. The boy began to walk to his kitchen to grab himself a bowl of ramen but froze midway through his journey as he stumbled upon a horrendous sight. His cabinets had been completely ripped from the wall and his ramen had been torn from the cabinet. Hundreds of containers of ramen laid piled up in the corner of the room. Their content laid in the middle of the kitchen floor, the strong scent of piss coming from their noodly form. She didn't know. This must be a bad dream. This can't be real. Naruto muttered to himself as he collapsed to his knees. Naruto's head almost twisted off when he heard a light giggle coming from his bedroom. The boy jumped to his feet and dashed to his room, intent on catching the person who had defiled his ramen. Naya. Nice of you to finally get home. Laying in his bed was Kuroka who looked to be eating the last edible cup of his ramen. The girl looked to be as happy as she could be as she slurped down a forkful of ramen. I'm going to kill you. Naruto said as he watched the girl throw away the now empty ramen container. The Nekashu stuck her tongue out at the boy before running and locking herself in the bathroom. "Open this damn door and pay for your sins," Naruto screamed as he banged against the wooden door. The girl's mad giggling could be heard from behind the protection of the door, clearly enjoying the blonde's anger. "An eye for an eye, Naruto-kun. You put a collar on me and in return, I take away what you love and care about the most. A collar doesn't even come close to how much that ramen meant to me. Meh, don't feel too bad. It didn't taste that good anyway, Naya. You take that back, you bastard." And thus, a beautiful relationship was formed. Chapter 12. The time had finally come. After 2 excruciatingly long weeks, the time for the rating game had finally showed up. All the effort, sweat, blood and tears that the Rias and her peerage had shed was finally going to be put on display. Kaneko sucked in a deep breath as she checked over herself once again. The girl was sat upon the couch in the clubroom. She was by herself, completely isolated from everyone else, as they also checked over their own equipment and supplies. The last 2 weeks for the girl had been hard, both physically and mentally. She had been forced to push herself further than she had ever done before. Going through school then immediately diving into training with Rias was hard enough. Leaving that training to go practice senjutsu with her slave driver of a boyfriend made it so much harder. "Naruto," the girl thought to herself as she inspected the small armlet wrapped around her forearm. The armlet had been a gift from the blonde given to her from the night before. The boy claimed it was made from a material that was more sensitive to natural chakra and could assist her with drawing it in. The girl had no further success in using nature's energy with it on, but she still appreciated the effort, though she did know that the gift was also partly given in a "I'm sorry"-like manner. When Naruto had finally revealed to her his connection with Ophis and her pursuit of him, Kaneko had been upset. Actually, upset was a rather mild way to put it. She was pissed. Partly because she was worried for the blonde and partly because he had hid something so big from her. She had decided to punish him by refusing to speak to him, even during their training session. The blonde didn't even last a full day before he began to almost beg for her to speak again. A part of her had been touched at his immediate reaction to her stoicism, while another part of her felt that breaking so soon wouldn't really be punishing the boy. Eventually, though, she couldn't keep up the frosty behavior with the boy and broke down. The depressed blonde just had an air about him that saddened Kaneko whenever she was near him. Hearing his downtrodden tone and seeing the sad look on his face was just too much for the girl to handle in the end. "Kaneko!" The Nekashu was snapped out of her trance by the calm voice of Kiba. The knight looked to be as calm as ever as he stood in front of his fellow peerage member. Kaneko could spot the 2 swords that were strapped to his hips and the large cleaver on his back. The knight looked like he was ready for war. "Ah! I'm sorry, Yuto-san. What were you saying?" Kaneko asked as she began to tighten the gloves around her fist. "I asked if you were ready. We are almost about to head out." Kaneko nodded her head, earning her a small nod from the knight before he turned and walked back to the rest of the group, leaving the girl alone once again. "Well, it's now or never," she thought to herself as she settled herself into a meditative position. This was her final chance to put what she learned from Naruto into use. And she wouldn't fail. Naruto's hand brushed up against the low-hanging foliage of the forest as he made his way around the clearing. As his fingers made contact with the greenery, the plants seemed to almost light up. Their dull green turned brilliant as a mixture of Naruto's chakra and natural chakra flowed through them. "Stop worrying so much. You're starting to agitate me." Naruto sighed at his partner's voice as he started making his way to the center of the clearing. "I can't help but worry. You saw how she was this morning. She wasn't focused. She looked like crap. She was barely able to even say goodbye when she left," Naruto said as he flopped down onto the ground, smushing the grass underneath his body. "You did everything you could do for her. Worrying about it now isn't going to help either of you at this point. Now shut up and move out the way." Naruto rolled several times to his right, just barely avoiding the wooden club that smashed into his previous position. Connected to the mace was a fully clothed and pissed off Heracles. "I'm glad that you managed to find your towel. I really didn't want to see you naked," Naruto said to the man from his position on the ground. The blonde was laid on his stomach while looking up at the muscular man. Heracles released a loud huff as he extracted the club from the ground and shouldered the weapon. "Fool! In my culture, us men are proud of our body. I am proud to show off what the gods have gifted me with," the man proclaimed before beginning to flex. Naruto watched in disgust as the hero struck several different poses, each pose accentuating a different part of the man's body. The Greeks were really full of themselves, weren't they? Kurama asked as the man continued to pose in front of the two. Naruto gave the kitsune a single nod as Heracles finally stopped his gun show. "Enough of this banter. You may have deceived me the first time, but I will not allow such trickery to outsmart the great Heracles," the man yelled while pointing his club at the teen. "I wasn't the one who was talking, plus if I remember correctly, I didn't trick you. I just beat the crap out of you." Heracles paid the blonde no mind as he charged at the boy once again, his movements very reminiscent of his first assault attempt. Seemed like the muscle-bound man hadn't learned from his mistakes. "In the name of Zeus, I smite the..." Heracles' speech was turned into a violent string of coughing when Naruto slammed his fist the man's throat. The hero was sent collapsing to the ground, grasping at his throat as he tried to suck in air from his abused throat. "You dare touch me?" the man managed to say in between his strangled coughs. He could barely talk through his partially crushed windpipe. "Why don't you just end him right here? This is the second time and I doubt you want to start making this a habit," Kurama suggested. "I can't just go around killing everything." Naruto struck his foot out, slamming it into Heracles' head just as the man recovered from his original coughing fit. The hero was sent crashing onto his back, clutching onto his now bleeding skull. Or everyone that agitates me a little. Let's just see if we can convince him to leave us alone for now." Naruto cut off the connection between him and his partner just as Heracles' pain-filled screams died down. The man was now slowly staggering to his feet, using his wooden club to help balance his shaky form. The hero's eyes screamed bloody murder as they stayed locked onto Naruto. "If you're finished trying to kill me, I think there may be a way for us to talk it out. There's no need for us to fight each other." Heracles let out a loud huff of air as he managed to finally support himself completely. "No. There will be no talking. It is your fault that I've been tasked with such a demeaning job and you will pay." With that single, loud and declarative shout the man's body began to grow. The black tint that could be seen in his veins previously seemed to grow darker as the man grew bigger. A dark energy began to seep out of the man's body, giving him a demented appearance. "This energy stinks of Ophis. Is this what she was planning to do with me if I agreed to her request?" Naruto watched as the tainted man shattered his club within his hands, leaving him weaponless. The hero, if he could be called that at this point, didn't seem to be too bothered by the loss of the weapon as he stared down Naruto with a twisted smirk on his face. "Now you shall face the true power of Olympus. Shake in fear, mortal." Heracles screamed before slamming his fist into the ground, actually managing to uproot the earth under Naruto's feet in the process. The shinobi quickly jumped away from the unstable ground and landed near the edge of the clearing, completely unharmed by the ground strike. Well, his strength definitely seems to have increased. It's a lot closer to his ancestors than it was before. It's probably a good idea that I don't let him hit me, the blonde thought to himself as he watched Heracles bury his fist into the ground. To the teen's surprise, the man ripped out a giant chunk of the earth with nothing but his brute strength. With a loud grunt of effort, Heracles lifted the forest ground above his head and began to laugh maniacally. "Now you see the true power of the Greeks," he yelled before throwing the man-made boulder at the blonde. The chunk of earth went sailing through the air at fast speeds, little pieces of it breaking off during its process. Within a few seconds, the boulder slammed into Naruto's position, exploding in a massive cloud of dust, grass and dirt. Heracles watched from afar, a large smile on his face as he waited for the dust to clear. The arrogant man was sure that his last attack had ended the annoying pest of a blonde. That was pretty surprising. Heracles' eyes widened at the voice that came from behind him. The man quickly spun around and drove his fist towards the blonde who had sped behind him. The blonde sidestepped the blow, allowing the fist to barrel harmlessly past his head. Naruto, taking advantage of the man's wide-open stance, drove his fist straight into the man's stomach. The blonde's fist buried itself deep into the hero's stomach, causing a wad of spit to come shooting out of his mouth. To the blonde's further shock, the spit was the only reaction he got from the man. Well, that and the boastful laughter that started to exit his mouth. Naruto quickly retracted his fist when he felt the man's muscle begin to ripple and shake along his fist. "Your weak attacks mean nothing to me. They only heal me. Strength from pain." The man screamed at the top of his lungs before dashing over to a tree. With a single hand, the man uprooted a tree from its position and threw it directly at Naruto. The blonde, not wanting to be struck at the giant missile, quickly dashed to the side. The tree sped past the shinobi, resulting in a loud booming noise as it eventually crashed into the ground. The teen did not react to the crashing sound, instead choosing to see how the hulking behemoth would react. And boy was the teen not disappointed. "Sit still!" Heracles screamed as he began to rip up every tree in his vicinity and throw it at his elusive opponent. If the man had taken a second to stop and observe the blonde, he probably would have quickly figured out that no matter how hard he threw, the boy was still going to dodge. Unfortunately for the masculine man, he never took that second. Heracles' temper tantrum continued for several minutes until a mixture of his exhaustion and a lack of trees forced him to stop. The man stood panting, clearly out of breath, in a wide barren circle that marked his path of destruction. "You annoying brat! You still haven't fallen!" The man gaped out in between deep gulps of breath. Naruto looked utterly bored as the man's temper started to flare once again. "No matter. This will finish you," Heracles proclaimed before pressing his hands together. Naruto watched curiously as Ophis energy began to slowly pour out of the man. The energy was without form for the first couple of seconds before slowly taking form. The dark energy formed into the shape of a roaring lion's head behind the man. The hero released a deep and booming laugh as the lion seemed to roar at the same time. "I will smite you in the name of Olympus." With those words, Heracles disappeared from Naruto's sight. The blonde felt a slight disturbance in the air from behind him, causing him to duck. His instincts paid off as Heracles appeared behind the teen and attempted to take off his head with a vicious haymaker. While ducked down, the shinobi swung his legs around in a large arc, knocking Heracles off of his feet. The man managed to steady himself before he slammed into the ground. With his balance back, Heracles released a loud growl before slamming his fist down onto the crown of Naruto's head, causing the blonde to disappear in a cloud of smoke. "What type of sorcery is this? I want to see blood, not smoke," the angered man yelled as he stared at the quickly dispersing cloud of smoke. His attention was stolen away from the cloud when he in agonizing pain slammed into the back of his head. The hero suddenly found himself in the air as a headache quickly began to spread through his head. Naruto watched in his sage mode as his opponent's flight ended with a rough face plant into the ground. A groan escaped out of the blonde's mouth as the hero began to climb back up. The blonde had hoped that the hit would have kept the hero down. Heracles spat out a mouthful of dirt as he hopped back up to his feet. The man's eyes quickly locked onto Naruto, the twin emerald orbs narrowing in anger at the sight of the shop owner. He quickly reached out and grabbed at one of the downed tree he had landed by. The man's thick finger dug into the tough bark of the tree as he hefted the vegetation up as if it weighed nothing. "Looks like your buddy has found himself a new toy." Naruto let out a scoff as the hero began to swing the tree back and forth, seemingly testing the usefulness of his new weapon. Once satisfied with his test run, Heracles' eyes shifted back to Naruto. "I will smite you. You already said that." Naruto's backhanded comment went flying over the older male's head as Heracles attempted to bring the tree crashing down onto Naruto. The blonde merely rolled out of the way, allowing the thick trunk of the tree to slam against the ground and not against his body. Heracles didn't seem to enjoy the casual dodging of his attack as the man released a loud growl before beginning to spin. The man's rotations began to speed up as the tree he was holding swept around in a large arc. Naruto, once he had saw what the man was planning, quickly jumped out of the way of the tree's path. Either unknowing or uncaring that his target was now out of range, Heracles continued to spin. "He definitely is not the brightest person you've faced." Naruto couldn't help but agree at his partner's assessment as the man continued to spin. After several seconds of observing him, the blonde had finally decided that enough was enough and that it was time to end this match. With a silent command, 4 clones appeared next to Naruto. The clones glanced at the leader before giving each other a small nod and disappearing from the blonde's side. Heracles' devastating spin attack was put to a rest when he felt a solid kick land against his back. The tree was sent flying out of the man's hand as he ascended upwards from the force of the kick. The man flew upward for several seconds until he looked to be slowing down, only for a clone to appear beneath him and kick at the man's back, pushing upward even more. This process continued 2 more times until Heracles was well over 100 feet in the air. Just as the man reached the apex of his flight, the original Naruto appeared above him with his leg raised to the sky. Time seemed to stop momentarily as the two opponents floated in midair briefly before Naruto brought his leg crashing down onto Heracles. All of the man's momentum was shifted downwards as he took off towards Earth. It didn't take long for the man to get reacquainted with the ground once again as he slammed into it seconds after Naruto's kick, throwing up a miniature cloud of smoke in the process. Naruto gently landed amongst the tree as the small dust cloud dispersed, revealing a knocked-out Heracles. The energy that had surrounded the man had disappeared, returning him to his original muscularity. He laid face first in the dirt, completely naked as his loincloth seemed to have gotten torn off during his return flight. That is definitely not something I wanted to see today. Naruto mumbled to himself while covering his eyes from Heracles' bare ass. The blonde jumped down from his tree and quickly approached the downed man, making sure to avoid looking at the man's bare ass on his way there. What do you plan to do with him? What do you mean by what do I plan on doing with him? There's nothing for me to do with him. You can't just leave him here. Who says I can't? Just watch me. And with that, the blonde made a 180-degree turn and walked away, leaving Heracles naked and lying face down in the dirt. She had failed. She had failed herself, she had failed Naruto, and she had failed Rias. Why won't it work? Please work. A hushed voice yelled to itself as the sound of explosions and roaring flames could be heard in the background. Kaneko cursed, something that was rather uncharacteristic of the girl, as the flames around her only seemed to grow. The Nekasha was crouched behind a rock, her breath coming in short pants as she clutched at her bleeding shoulder. Everything had immediately gone to shit as soon as the match had started. The strategy that Rias had laid out failed immediately. Their thinking that they had a home field advantage had been their biggest mistake. Every move they made, one of Riser's pieces seemed to be there to counteract it. It had started off when Rias had sent Kiba and Kaneko to capture the gym. The redhead had expected the duo to meet a small force consisting of some of Riser's pawn. With the training they had been through, the pawns shouldn't have been a problem for the Knight-Rook duo. In truth, the pawns would have been an easy challenge for the two. But they hadn't expected Riser to send one of his strongest pieces, his bomber queen, to capture the gym stronghold. As soon as the two walked into the gym, they had fallen right into her trap. The queen had laced the entire gym with explosives. They hadn't realized it until it was too late. Riser's queen had set off the explosives, immediately retiring Kiba and sending Kaneko blasting from out of the building. The girl was sure that if it wasn't for her chess piece enhancements, she would have been retired right along with her comrade. Instead, she had been sent flying across campus until eventually slamming into the campus boundaries. And this is how Kaneko found herself kneeling behind a rock, her face twisted in a mask of frustration and concentration as she attempted to pull on the natural energy of the world. She was having no luck with it as each failed attempt drove her deeper and deeper into her frustration. Please work. The girl whispered to herself as she began to close her eyes for one more attempt. A loud explosion, this one closer than any of the others, interrupted her before she could even start. Rias's queen has been retired. Tears began to pool in the girl's eyes when the announcement finished playing. Their chances of winning were quickly drifting away. Kiba was gone, Akino was gone, she had no idea where Issei or Asia was, and she was injured. So this is where you've been hiding? Kaneko's head snapped up at the sound of the voice. The girl's stomach dropped when she took in the flying form of Riser's queen. A mad grin was plastered across the young woman's face as she stared down at the Nekasha. I was a bit disappointed when you didn't retire from my first attack. You've made this match drag on for far too long. Kaneko was forced to jump from her hiding spot as the queen started to bombard her with her attacks. The girl was a blur as she dashed across campus with Riser's queen in hot pursuit. She dashed back and forth, barely dodging the explosive attacks that were being sent at her by her opponent. I need to find cover. Kaneko thought to herself as she suddenly changed the direction she was traveling in, just barely dodging an explosive ball of devil energy that slammed into the ground, and not even a second later. You can try to run and hide all you want, little kitten, but I will find you. Yubiluna's melodious voice floated through the air as she flew after Kaneko. A small ball of energy formed in the woman's hand as she began to descend closer to the fleeing Kaneko. Die, kitty! The purple-haired woman yelled as she released her attack at the girl. The ball of flames traveled through the air, growing larger and larger in the air as it approached the girl. At the last second, the Nekasha turned around only to come face to face with a massive ball of fire. The girl quickly crossed her arms and braced herself for impact. Can I come home and not find it destroyed at least once? Naruto asked to himself as he stepped inside of his house. The blonde had just got finished his fight with Heracles and returned home with plans of relaxing. Unfortunately, his plans of relaxation was thrown out of the window when he noticed the state the interior of his house was in. The cushions of his couch had been completely ripped apart. Clumps of fluff and feathers were scattered all across the room. Random containers of both food and drink could be seen lying in the living, some empty and some half full. The curtains that usually up in the windows had sharp claw marks in them and were lying uselessly on the floor. And in the middle of all this chaos was a carefree Kuroka. "Maybe when you take this collar off and let me go," the Nekasha responded as she hopped to her feet. Naruto shook his head as several clones appeared in puffs of smoke before beginning to clean up the mess the woman had created. "And let you have your power and freedom back so you can try and kill me? I don't think so." A pout formed on Kuroka's face as she quickly made her way over to the blonde. The sensual girl latched herself to Naruto's side, her cleavage conveniently pressed against his arm. "Oh, but I promise that I won't try to kill you again. So please take this mean collar off of me." Kuroka emphasized her request by pressing herself even more against Naruto. The girl's advances were met with a deadpan look from the boy, causing her sweet expression to quickly sour. With a light growl, the girl swiped at the blonde, burying her claws in his throat and forcing him to disperse in a cloud of smoke. "I still can't tell the difference between the real one and his clones," Kuroka mumbled to herself as she glanced around at the room full of clones. After several seconds of observation, the devil released a sigh of defeat before making her way to the master bedroom. To the Nekasha's pleasant surprise, she discovered another Naruto within the bedroom. This Naruto was sat upon the untouched bed, a large scroll in one hand and a calligraphy brush in the other. A look of concentration was etched across of his face as he focused on the scroll in front of him. "If you've come to try and kill me again, can you try a bit later? I'm a little busy at the moment." An angry murmur escaped Kuroka at being caught so easily. The Nekasha made her way over to the bed before throwing herself on it, flopping limply against the mattress. "Whatcha working on? Weren't you just trying to kill me a second ago?" Kuroka released a huff before rolling over onto her back. Her pouty eyes met with Naruto's suspicion-filled ones. "That was just your clone, Naya. I knew it wasn't you." Naruto's deadpan look made it rather clear just how much he actually believed the girl, causing Kuroka to pout once more. "Stop being so mean. I didn't mean it." Naruto looked to be about to respond to the weak excuse but was interrupted when an intense glowing reached his eyes. Kuroka's eyes fell upon the kanji symbol that was glowing a bright yellow along the back of Naruto's hand. "Nico." Kuroka managed to decipher the kanji just as Naruto disappeared from his bed, leaving the girl alone once again. So far, Yubaluna had been having a good day. She had spent the morning getting some heavy petting from her master. After that, she had spent some time with the trains in preparation from the match. The peerage hadn't been expecting much of challenge going into the raiding game, so not much time had been spent training. As soon as they had started, their predictions had come true. Ria's peerage only offered the full peerage a minimal challenge. Her trap at the beginning of the game had managed to wipe out one of the girl's strongest pieces. She had been a bit disappointed that she hadn't managed to also get Kaneko, but it didn't last for very long. While searching for the Nekasha, she had discovered the perverted pawn piece known as Issei. The boy had been basically hypnotized by her figure and dress, making him a very easy target for her attack. She didn't hear an announcement announcing his retirement though, which wasn't that big of a deal to her. Even if he managed to survive the attack, he didn't seem to be much of a threat in the first place. Finally, after several minutes of searching, she had found the kitten. She was extremely pleased to see that the girl had been injured by her first attack, making her an even easier target. The girl running was only prolonging the inevitable. "Die, kitty!" she had screamed as she unleashed her strongest fire-based attack. Her smile was as wide as ever as she watched the ball of flames expand until a massive sphere that was more than 30 times the girl's size. No matter how fast the girl ran, she wouldn't be able to escape this one. Yubaluna's grin threatened to split her face as the flames slammed into the girl, washing over the devil and setting the field aflame. A gleeful giggle exited her lips as she watched flames spread over the entirety of the field. "Riser-sama will be so happy with me," Yubaluna said to herself as she watched the mesmerizing flames. The woman was so focused on the flames that she didn't even notice that Graphia hadn't announced Kaneko's retirement. The girl's survival soon became clear to the purple-haired woman as the flames of her attack began to die down. To the devil's surprise, Kaneko was completely unharmed from her attack. Not even her clothes had been singed from the attack. What was even more surprising was the person standing in front of the girl. His vibrant blonde hair was the first thing that caught the woman's attention. Unlike her masters, this person's hair seemed to defy gravity and stand freely in the air. His narrowed blue eyes were trained onto her flying form. The man was dressed in a garb that was very plain to the girl. A simple yellow shirt that did well to highlight his muscular form. A pair of sweatpants hid his lower body from the world while the teen went shoeless. What the hell? Yubeluna asked herself. What the lower-class devil didn't realize was that she wasn't the only one having these thoughts. What the hell is going on here? A loud voice proclaimed as the massive screen zoomed in on the blonde newcomer. Settled in front of the screen were some of the most influential devils alive in the underworld. Lord and Lady Phoenix, Lord Gremory and his wife, Venelana Gremory, Sirzechs Lucifer and the other 3-4 great Satans with a whole host of other devils. Lord Phoenix was the one who voiced what everyone else was thinking at the time. Just moments ago, the group of devils had been resigned to the fact that Rias was about to lose yet another member of her peerage. The rating game hadn't started off in the girl's favor and that hadn't changed at all. The girl losing yet another piece wasn't too surprising to anyone, not even her older brother. What was surprising was the appearance of the blonde newcomer. No one should have been able to transport themselves into the rating game. The game was beheld in a separate dimension, only accessible by the overseer of the match, which happened to be Graphia. Who is this boy? How did he manage to get in there? He is one of Rias' pieces. Question after question was fired off as the group of devils settled in a state of confusion. Sirzechs was one of the few who still had his entire focus on his screen, a small smile tugging at the man's lips. Do you know who this is, Sirzechs-chan? Seraphal asked as she noticed the happy expression on the man's face. The redhead devil turned his head towards the young-looking woman, his smile only seeming to grow larger at the action. All I can say is that this match is about to get a lot more interesting. Naruto-kun. Kaneko whispered out as she stared at the back of her boyfriend's head. Only moments ago, the girl had been prepared to take a fireball to the chest. She hadn't expected the sudden arrival of the blonde, though she certainly wasn't complaining. Just sit back and relax, Nico-chan. I'll handle it from here. Kaneko could do nothing but nod at the boy's commanding tone. A comforting haze had settled over the girl like when she trained with the blonde, except this feeling had an underlying tone of rage. What the hell is going on? Yubeluna muttered to herself as she watched the exchange going on between the devil and the human. Whatever the boy had just said to the Nekasha had calmed the girl down considerably as she took several steps away from the blonde. Yubeluna's attention was stolen away from the two when she felt a sharp pain rip through her wings. The woman glanced over at her right wing and was shocked to see that a hole was now present in the appendage. Several more sharp pains tore through the girl's wings as more and more holes appeared in them. A loud cry of pain exited the woman's mouth as she quickly began to descend to the ground, her wings unable to keep her afloat. The devil's landing was not a graceful one as she stumbled down to her feet. She quickly managed to regain her balance before beginning to inspect her damaged wings. What did that boy do to em? Those were the last words the woman would be saying in the rating game as Naruto appeared by her side, a Rasengan already formed in his hand. Without any warning or a single sign of remorse, the blonde slammed the spiraling sphere into the woman's side, forcing her to endure a brief second of excruciating pain before she was forcibly retired. Kunai! Don't you think that was a bit extra? She threw a giant fireball at Kaneko-chan. She signed her own fate the second she did that. Naruto stoically said as he watched the girl fade away from his eyes. Whether that signified her death in this dimension or not, he did not know. All he knew was that she had felt the pain that she had been planning to inflict on Kaneko. Biggest energy source excluding the Rias girl is coming from the south. This place seems to be a replica of your kitten's school. Naruto nodded as a clone appeared wordlessly beside him. The clone quickly dashed over to Kaneko as the original disappeared. Ah! Our Riser's queen has been retired. The chaotic room quickly fell silent at Graphia's hesitant proclamation. Everyone's eyes were glued onto the screen in front of them that was displaying the quick and vicious assault that led to Yubeluna's retirement. Sirzechs-sama, you never reported that Rias had another peerage member. Where did she acquire such a piece? The most powerful devil in the underworld looked as casual as ever as he leaned back into his chair. His arms were crossed behind his head as he stared at the projected screen in front of him. I never knew that she acquired the boy as a piece. It must have been pretty recently if it managed to sneak past me. Sirzechs explained calmly as his eyes stayed locked on the screen. The Satan had no idea that his sister was even aiming for Naruto to be in her peerage. The fact that his sister had managed to get such a powerful person in her peerage filled him with joy. Riastan is going to win now. Inside of his head, the devil was screaming and dancing in celebration. The man knew how strong the blonde was and had no doubts that the boy would be able to defeat the phoenix. Ah! Sirzechs, we may have a bit of a problem. The red Satan turned his head to look at one of his oldest friends, Ajuka Beelzebub. The blue Satan was a very handsome-looking man with light blue eyes and slicked-back green hair. He was dressed in simple green robes and was clutching a tablet in his hand. What is it, Ajuka? The Satan cleared his throat before beginning to swipe away at the tablet. As you know, I created the evil peace system, so to say the least, I've become very familiar with it. I also helped create these rating games. Today I came to support your sister and to make sure things went as smoothly as possible. The man started off before swiping right on his tablet. Everyone's attention was directed back onto the projected screen as Ajuka's tablet began to be displayed on it. The display was a massive layout of the Kuo Academy. Every single detail was mapped out in extreme detail, leaving absolutely no room for error. On the map were several glowing blips that varied in size. Each of the blips had a dark red tint to it with a small name beside it except for the largest one, which glowed a blinding blue. As you can see, this is a layout of the dimension that Rias and Riser are battling in. The dots you see on the individual pieces and their pieces. The red glow is due to their demonic energy. All this information is sent to me via their evil pieces. Ajuka explained to the room full of devils. Then why doesn't that circle have a name next to it? And why isn't it glowing red? Lord Phoenix's asked, curiosity clear in his voice. The smile on Sirzechs' face slowly began to fall as realization came upon the man. That's the issue. I can't detect an evil piece or even a single ounce of devilic energy in this boy. I've run my scans over a dozen times since his appearance and they all are coming back saying that this boy is actually a human. The silence in the room was deafening as the Satan's statement hit them. The smile on Sirzechs' face was completely gone as he realized the implication of his friend's statement. Are you claiming that a human is in this rating game and managed to take down a devil? The Phoenix clan head's incredulous tone was shared by everyone as the man directed his question to the Satan. There was no way a human managed. I'm not claiming it, I'm telling you that it's true. That boy is a human. Ah! Our Riser's queen has been retired. Riser's brow furrowed in confusion at the announcement. There should have been no one in Rias' peerage that could even hurt his queen enough to retire the girl. He knew that while the girl was classified as a lower-class devil, she had the potential to be mid-class just with her attacks alone. This is troublesome. I wanted the match to be over by now. The man's irritated tone was quickly noticed by his two rooks who were protecting them. I'm sure that Ubeluna just fell for a trap or something. Cirrus or Carmeline should be ending the match soon. Isabella said in her usual gruff tone. Shuelon nodded her head in agreement, her confidence in her fellow pieces. The two pieces were so focused on their master that they didn't even notice the kunai that landed in between the two. Because they didn't notice the kunai, they also missed the paper tag that was attached to its handle. The kunai presence was announced when the paper tag went off, releasing a massive explosion that caught the trio off guard. The two rooks were thrown to the side by the explosive force while Riser was covered in the smoke. The pieces quickly recovered from the sneak attack and dashed back over to their master. To their shock and slight fear, the Phoenix heir was no longer there. What the two rooks didn't see was that Naruto, in the midst of the explosion and the dust cloud, dashed in, grabbed onto Riser and shunshined away. The two blondes appeared in a field along the outer limits of the school. Riser immediately stumbled to the ground, clutching his stomach as he tried to hold in his stomach. The sudden quick and unwanted movement had caught the man off balance and almost made him throw up. Am I right to assume that you are the king of that purple-haired woman? Riser shifted his focus from the ground to the blonde that was standing over top of him. The teen's face was settled into a blank mask as his arms were crossed over his chest, making for a very intimidating pose. Are you speaking of Ubeluna? If so, I have the displeasure of saying yes to your question. I see she failed to take out that pesky rook. Pathetic. Riser said as he climbed to his feet, completely missing the hardening of Naruto's face at his words. What the devil didn't miss was the fist that buried itself in his stomach. This time, the phoenix couldn't hold his lunch down as a mixture of blood, spit and throw up flew from out of his life as he hunched over his fellow blonde's fist. The man's pain only grew worse when he felt a hand grab onto the back of his head. Mercilessly, his head was forced down into the grab, being smashed into the small puddle of bodily fluids he had just released. You hurt someone very close to me. In other words, you made one of the biggest mistakes of your life, Naruto said as he held the man's head down. With a slight grunt of effort, the shinobi lifted the dazed devil by his head and threw him, sending him tumbling across the field. Riser's tumbling was put to a stop as the man's body exploded into flames. Two wings made of flames manifested on his back as the man quickly took to the skies. The devil's face was twisted in a disgusted sneer as he stared down at Naruto. You will die for touching me like that, Riser yelled before beginning to unleash a volley of fireballs down at the blonde. Naruto immediately began to go through a chain of hand signs before calling out his technique. Water release, water dragon. The blonde's cheeks puffed up before he began to spew an inhumane amount of water from his mouth. The water quickly took on the shape of a dragon before taking off towards the rain of fireball. The balls of flame did absolutely nothing to stop the dragon's ascent as they dispersed harmlessly against the water's construct body. The dragon continued to fly higher and higher into the sky, his true target becoming clear as its altitude increased. Riser, realizing that his fireballs were doing nothing to halt the dragon that was coming for him, quickly dived past the creature. The dragon attempted to catch the phoenix with a snap of its jaw but missed the flying devil. Riser kept his dive towards the ground going as he directed himself at Naruto. The shinobi was completely still as he looked at the flying phoenix. The man's fists were drawn back and covered in flames as he prepared to release a devastating punch. As soon as Riser came within reach of the younger blonde, the man struck his fist out at the shinobi. To the phoenix's shock, his flaming punch was caught in the crushing grip of his opponent. The devil quickly struck his other fist out but was only met with disappointment when it was also caught by the blonde. The phoenix's attention was stolen away from the blonde when he heard a loud roar come from behind him. The devil turned his head, horror quickly filling him when he realized that the water dragon was still chasing after him. The clan heir tried to pull away from the blonde's grip and was even more horrified when he realized he couldn't break the hold. Release me! Riser yelled as his arms exploded into flames. The fire didn't seem to affect his fellow blonde as Naruto continued to maintain his hold on Phoenix. Riser turned his head, a face a mask of fear, and saw that the dragon was now directly behind him, its jaw open as it prepared to devour the phoenix. With a loud roar, the dragon sunk its watery teeth into the phoenix, forcing a loud scream out of the man. Naruto finally released his hold on the man as the dragon ripped the man from his grip. The dragon began to ascend into the air, sinking its teeth deeper into the phoenix as it flew higher and higher. Finally, after reaching a height of over 100 meters, the dragon stopped climbing. With its head pointed up towards the sky and its wings outstretched, the dragon swallowed the phoenix whole before violently exploded into a brilliant mist of water and chakra. Naruto watched as the drenched and battered body of the phoenix began to fall to the earth. The devil made a hard and wet sound as his body slammed into the ground before laying motionless. I thought you said you were against killing. Naruto ignored his partner's comment as he made his way over to Phoenix. Once the shinobi had reached the man's body, he quickly flipped the man onto his back with the use of his feet. Riser returned to the land of consciousness when a foot slammed into his head. A loud cry of pain exited the man as his body began to register the pain it was in. The man didn't have much time to wallow in his pain, however, as a hand grabbed onto his throat and lifted him into his air. His eyes quickly locked onto the eyes of the blonde who had just soundly defeated him. I don't know what politics or bullshit you devils go through, but let me make something very clear to you. You and your minions stay away from Kaneko. You hurt her or touch her or even order someone to do it again, then I will end you. The two remained in an eye lock as Riser struggled to answer due to the hand that was wrapped around his throat. After several moments of struggling, the man gave up on giving a verbal answer and simply nodded, his body unable to do anything else due to the pain it was in. Good. I'm GL. Step away from the Phoenix. Naruto was interrupted mid-sentence by a very loud and very familiar voice. The blonde turned his head and discovered a very shocking sight. Behind him was what could be best described as a small legion of devils. An abundance of them looked to be on the verge of murdering him as their attacks were already charged in their heads. Several of them were floating in the air as their eyes stayed trained onto the shinobi. And leading this whole group of devils was one Sirzechs Lucifer. Congratulations! You've managed to piss off yet another faction of supernatural creatures. Have fun! And with that, Kurama went silent, leaving Naruto alone to deal with the group of agitated words. Only 6 words came to the blonde's mind to help describe the situation he found himself in. Kami, why do you hate me? Chapter 13. He just couldn't catch a break. Nope, not one break at all. A break was just too much to ask for at this point in his life. Being born and having your parents killed immediately afterwards? No break there. Having a demon sealed inside of you? Still no break. Being discriminated your whole entire life by your own village because of said demon? Nope. Fighting your whole entire life, slaying an ancient rabbit goddess only to be transported to another dimension? Still couldn't catch a break there. These events seemed to happen so frequently in his life that Naruto just stopped being so affected by them. But pissing off 3 factions of supernatural creatures in the span of a month was not something the blonde expected he would ever do. It wasn't something he would even dream of happening in 1,000 years. Not when he was in the elemental nations or on planet Earth. But somehow, most likely due to the blonde's close but bitter relationship with Lady Luck, that exact situation was actually in the process of happening. Naruto. Sirzechs' tone was a warning one as he stared at the boy who had his hand wrapped around Riser Phoenix's throat. The Phoenix heir was still struggling to breathe, clawing and scratching at Naruto's hand, unable to compromise the boy's grip. Well, this a bit awkward, Naruto said while staring at the small squadron of devils in front of him. The variety between them all was almost unimaginable. Some took the form of some of the most beautiful/handsome men and women Naruto had ever seen. Others had grotesque body parts and growth that truly fit their title as devils. And all of them looked to be seconds away from blasting his ass to hell. Let go of my son, human, or I'll be sure that the rest of your pathetic existence will be spent getting roasted by my own personal flames. Lord Phoenix yelled as he stepped towards the blonde. Naruto's eyes quickly swept over the man, immediately noticing the similarities between him and Riser. Tiny embers were shooting from the man's skin, showcasing just how angry the man was. This is your son? Then excuse me when I say this, but you've done an absolutely terrible job at parenting. Naruto's comments seemed to pick at the man's nerve as the flames around him began to grow. The man was calmed, however, when Sirzechs rested his hand on the Phoenix's shoulder. Stop this, Naruto. Put the man down and let's handle this peacefully. While he looked calm on the outside, inwardly Sirzechs was begging for the blonde to just listen. He could sense the mounting tension between the two groups, and while he was a Satan, he wasn't too entirely sure that he would be able to stop a group with several middle and high-class devils in it. Thankfully for the Satan, Naruto answered his silent pleading by releasing Riser's throat. The Phoenix collapsed to the ground, gasping for air as the constriction around his throat finally disappeared. The man began to climb to his feet while glaring harshly at the blonde who had assaulted him. He looked to be about to attack Naruto again but was stopped by the stern voice of his father. Riser. Enough. You've humiliated yourself and your family enough for today. Suck up your wounded pride and come back over here. Lord Phoenix's words caused a very harsh scowl to appear on his son's face. The younger Phoenix held his glare on Naruto for several more seconds before beginning to limp over to his father and the rest of the devils. Now Naruto, I'm going to ask you to peacefully throw down any weapons you may have on you and come with us. Sirzechs said in an even and calm voice. Naruto remained still, only eyeing the red-headed devil and the group behind him. What happens if I don't? Naruto's question sent a ripple of tension shooting through the crowd of devils. Some of them continued to power up their attacks while others started to summon weapons into their hand. Sirzechs began to sweat nervously as he sensed a fight about to break out between the two groups. We're not going to hurt you, Naruto-kun. We just want to find out some answers. I promise that no harm will fall on you in my custody. Inwardly the devil was pleading for the boy to just shut up and follow his command. I believe that you aren't going to hurt me. Unfortunately, I don't believe that the rest of your group will do the same. They don't look as friendly as you do. Naruto could sense the tidal wave of negative emotions that were pouring out from the group of devils. The blonde wasn't stupid. He knew that in the hands of the devil, he wouldn't experience much pleasure. Enough of this banter, Sirzechs. It's obvious that the boy isn't going to willingly come with us. Such a shame. I would have loved to pick him apart and see what made him tick. Ajuka said as he stepped forward. Sirzechs watched with a sense of dread as more and more devils followed the scientist's lead. The situation was quickly slipping out of the man's hand. Seems like you're in a bit of a bind. Kurama's voice was welcoming for the blonde in this situation. I thought you were going to leave me to deal with this all by myself. Naruto said as he scanned the slowly advancing group of devil. The blonde's muscles were tensed as the situation continued to spiral out of control. I couldn't just let you have all of the fun. We're partners after all. Kurama's comment made Naruto smile as the tailed beast began to feed his chakra into his host's body. The small change went unnoticed by the approaching devils as they continued to close the distance between them and the blonde. We're aiming to stun, not kill. There's no reason to put myself deeper on these people's shit list. Naruto's comment forced a groan out of Kurama, but the tailed beast seemed to comply as he said no more. The boy is about to attack. Restrain him. Lord Phoenix yelled as Naruto reached to his side. A cry of outrage left Sirzechs' lips, but the devil's cry could not be heard over the battle cries of the charging devils. Naruto's eyes narrowed as a numerous amount of attacks were thrown his way. The variety between the attacks were great, some of them ranging from simple fiendish-looking orbs to streaking bullets that were brilliant shades of different colors. You may want to move out the way. Naruto chuckled at his partner's comment before disappearing from the devil's sight, leaving behind a small crater in the ground. The ranged attacks of the devils slammed into the blonde's previous position, completely missing the speedy blonde. Where did the boy go? The question collectively began to travel through the crowd of devils as the blonde remained hidden from their sight. The group of battle-hardened devils unconsciously settled into a defensive position. Their past training and experience from fighting against the fallen angels and angels had taught them to be prepared for a sneak attack. The attack came in the form of a single kunai with a paper tag attached to it. The weapon flew through the air and landed near the center of the devil's defensive formation. Not a single one of them had any time to react before a large cloud of dark smoke began to spew from out of the paper tag. The smoke quickly spread throughout the entirety of the clearing, obscuring of all its occupants' sight. I'm surprised that you haven't stepped in and stopped this already. Sirzechs' attention was taken away from growing smokeball by his friend's voice. The devil turned his head to glance at Ajuka, who was standing carelessly at his side with his laptop clutched in his hands. The green-haired man's eyes were trained on the scene that was evolving before them. Don't act so surprised. I would have loved to pick him apart. That's the dumbest thing I have ever heard you say before. I know you were just giving the boy a bit of a push. Just like you, I'm curious as to what this human can do. I figured I would take this opportunity to truly test his threat level. Sirzechs returned his gaze back on the clearing as the smoke ball seemed to reach the height of its growth. Ajuka hummed thoughtfully at his friend's comment before glancing down at his tablet. You are correct about my curiosity. I am curious how this boy managed to break into this raiding game. After all, the technology that made this ratings game possible was my own. It was meant to keep out any outside intruders. A human that bested my invention does not exactly sit well with me. The devil commented as he swiped at the device in his hand. Within seconds, an overhead view of the smoke-filled clearing appeared on the man's screen. Enough of this chatter though. Let's see what our blonde friend has in store for us. And with that, the duo began to fully focus on the scene in front of them. Someone clear this smoke. A random devil yelled through the thick blackness of the smoke. The man's request went unanswered for several seconds before a sudden strong wind swept through the clearing. The wind seemed to latch onto smoke and lifted it away from the group of devil. What the? The devil's voice trailed off as he noticed the new additions to the field. Bordering the outline of the clearing was a large ceiling array. Of course, to the devils, the array was foreign and thus was immediately labeled dangerous to them. Before the devils could escape the clearing, the ceiling array lit up in a brilliant shade of blue. Everything within the clearing seemed to freeze for a moment before the ground began to crack. One by one, the devils were seemingly pushed down onto the ground, loud cries of confusion and pain ranging through the air as more and more fell. Soon each devil within the seal was laid flat against the ground. Confusion was still fresh on their face as they struggled against some invisible force in order to climb back on their feet. Gravity seals. You can't beat them. Naruto made his presence known as he stepped from out his hiding spot in the forest. The boy was aimlessly tossing a rock up into the air while staring down at the group of devils that were caught in his seal. When the blonde's smoke tag had activated, he had went about creating several clones that were to help him with his seal. Within the confusion and darkness of the smoke, he quickly marked up the clearing with the symbols necessary for the gravity seal. With his clone's help, the shinobi had managed to complete the task before the smoke had cleared. I'm guessing none of you have any experience working under a more intensive gravitational pull, the blonde said before lobbing the rock towards the sealing array. Once the rock crossed into the seal's boundary, it was sent careening to the ground at irregular speed. Release us immediately, one of the devils managed to say under the strain of gravity. Naruto glanced down at the struggling man before a large grin popped on the blonde's face. And why should I do th? The blonde had to interrupt himself when a large fireball filled his vision. Without batting an eye, the boy performed a sealless shunshin, causing him to disappear within a small puff of smoke. He appeared amongst the trees that lined the small forest clearing. His eyes began to scan through the clearing, his curiosity raised by the fact that someone had managed to overcome the effects of his gravity seal so quickly. To the blonde's shock, the person who had overcame his gravity seal wasn't some hulking beast of a devil or an oversized monster. No, it was actually the exact opposite. The girl was obviously still struggling to stand, something that was evident by the shaking of her legs and the slight layer of sweat that was already covering her skin. The pink dress that covered her small frame looked to be about to rip off her body due to the effects of the gravity seal. The girl's hair was fashioned into two large drill-shaped curls. Her face was contorted into a mask of concentration as she focused on staying on her feet. Well, that was unexpected, Naruto thought to himself as he watched the girl continue to shake. The raw determination she was exhibiting just by standing up was pretty impressive. The fact that she had mustered up the concentration to fire off a spell while dealing with the gravity seal was even more impressive. Release us from this sorcery immediately, or so help me, in the name of the Phoenix clan, I will smite you. The girl spat out with a surprising amount of venom in her voice. A small fireball began to form in the girl's voice as she held her glare on Naruto. You're really slacking if a little girl was able to put up with the seal. What would the old pervert say about that? Kurama's jestful comment made Naruto scoff. Jiraiya wouldn't have said anything. He would be too busy ogling every female in sight. Besides, maybe this girl just happens to have more willpower than any of these devils. Naruto responded to his partner just as the girl's determination seemed to leave her. The attack in her hand sputtered into nothingness just as the girl collapsed down onto her knees. Apparently not enough to do anything useful though. Naruto hummed at his partner's comment. The humming was quickly put to a stop when the ground beneath the blonde began to shake erratically. The trees shook along with him, shedding a large amount of their leaves in the process. As the shaking grew stronger, the source of the quakes became apparent to the blonde when a large shard of ice ruptured the ground below him. The single ice spike quickly turned into multiple as the area around the shinobi began to freeze over. Luckily for the blonde, he managed to jump away just as the ice broke through the ground, narrowly avoiding getting skewered by the spikes. The blonde landed amongst the tree branches as the ice quickly spread over most of the clearing. The ice quickly spread over to the trapped devils and the seal that surrounded them. The ice seemed to seep into the seal itself, causing its blue light to grow a dark and chilling navy blue. Within a couple of seconds, the seal's glow completely died down, freeing its occupants from the ground. Sirzechs and Ajukas glanced in between them and were surprised to see their fellow Satan standing there with her fist outstretched. The Satan girl released a small giggle before straightening upright. You guys look surprised to see me, the beautiful girl stated. Her vibrant, violet eyes seemed to sparkle with mischievous as she clutched onto a small wand. Her long black hair contrasted nicely with tight and rather revealing magical girl clothing. We are. Last time we saw you was before the raiding game had actually started. I saw you grab your sister and dash off. I just sort of assumed you had left. Ajuka explained as the devils in the field began to climb to their feet. The pink Satan released a small giggle at the man's word. I just needed to comfort Sona-chan. She was a little upset at having to watch her friend go through something like this. The girl explained as she turned her attention back onto the clearing. The devils, their pride hurt from being restrained so easily, were in a borderline frenzy as they searched for the blonde. Plus, with my job as head of foreign affairs, a human managing to sneak his way into one of your raiding games is pretty interesting to me. Especially since he's so cute. I wouldn't miss this for the world. The trio went back to silent observation as their kinsmen found their target. Just turn around and blast them all. I don't know why you're running. Just hurry up and end this. Naruto released an angry huff at his partner's comments as he hopped from tree to tree. Behind him, a multitude of devils could be seen flying through the air, hot on the blonde's heels. Try to show a bit more patience, the shinobi stated just as he started to feel a rising heat on his back. The team turned around and was immediately greeted to the sight of a massive fireball. The blonde's eyes widened just as the fireball impacted against him, consuming his body entirely. Ha! Revel exclaimed as she watched the boy who defeated her brother be consumed in her flames. A victorious grin erected itself upon the girl's face as she watched the boy's burning body fall to the forest floor. The grin was quickly put to rest when she noticed that the boy that she had just killed was actually a log. Brace yourselves. Revel heard briefly before an immensely strong gust of wind slammed into the girl. All of her forward velocity was put to a rest as she was sent tumbling backwards through the air by the gust of wind. Unlike her comrades, Ravel's affinity towards aerokinesis allowed her to recover slightly quicker than the other devils. Due to her early recovery, she was able to catch a brief glimpse of a yellow flash before several devils were sent tumbling from the sky, their body covered various wounds. Wah! Was all Revel could say as the yellow blur appeared once again in her vision. The flash dashed from devil to devil, leaving each devil plummeting from the sky with their body covered in a multitude of cuts and gashes. Before long, the blonde phoenix girl was the only one left standing. Sorry about this, was the last thing Revel heard before she lost consciousness. Behind her, Naruto watched the girl fall to the ground, she being the last of the devils that he had dealt with. You're no fun. You didn't even use any of my chakra. Just your father's stupid technique. Shut up and stop whining. I told you that there was no point in doing anything lethal, Naruto said in response to the tailed beast's childish comment as he descended to the ground. The teen's feet quickly met the ground as several people made their presence known to the blonde. Rias honestly couldn't believe how her day had gone up to this point. Her morning had been spent with her being filled with a mixture of worry and anxiety about her rating game. Her uncertainty of her peerage's ability when compared to Riser's peerage and how much the match would affect her life only worsened the trepidation. Her worst nightmares started to come true as soon as the rating game began. Her well-planned strategy immediately began to crumble beneath the sheer number and power of Riser's pieces. All of the training that her group had went through seemed to be for naught as each of her pieces began to be retired. When Akino had fallen, Rias had given up all hope. She had been fully prepared to forfeit the match then and there in order to spare the remainder of her peerage any harm. Except that when the girl had called out to Graphia in order to resign from the match, she received no response. The girl had spent a full minute calling out to her sister-in-law and was only greeted with silence, a strange occurrence since Graphia's position as overseer of the match gave her unlimited access to all of the dueling grounds. It was only when the announcement that Riser's queen had been retired was played that Rias dared to do something as stupid as to leave her position in the clubroom in order to investigate what was happening. With her lacking in numbers and Riser's impatience, the Gremory girl had expected the man to have ended the match by now. To the redhead's surprise, halfway through her investigation, she encountered one of pieces, her rook to be exact. The Nekashu was leaned up against a tree, a happy glaze settled over the girl's face. The devil's uniform was ripped in multiple areas, revealing a large portion of her skin. The girl didn't seem to care one bit though as she continued to stare off into space. Kaneko! Rias muttered out softly as she approached the girl. The rook didn't respond at all as her king continued to approach her. The heiress was within arm's reach of the girl as she reached out and lightly touched the Nekashu on her shoulder. Naruto-kun! Kaneko muttered out, drawing a raised eyebrow from her queen. The redhead shaked the younger girl's shoulder only to be met with the same response. An annoyed look crossed the king's face before she drew her hand back and smacked her rook across the cheek. The stunned girl was brought out of her shock by the impact of the hit. Ah! Very unnecessary, Rias-sama. The young girl muttered as she rubbed her red cheek. Rias released a small huff as her rook climbed onto her feet, the haze now completely gone from her eyes. Well, you weren't responding and I got worried. All you kept muttering was, Naruto-kun. I don't think this is the time and place to be worrying about him. Rias had to stop herself from rolling her eyes as Kaneko's eyes seemed to light up at the mention of her boyfriend's name. The younger girl's back straightened as she began to inspect the area around her. Naruto-kun. He was here earlier. He took care of Riser's queen. A look of shock crossed Ria's face at Kaniko's admission. That had been completely unexpected. The fact that boy had somehow managed to find his way into her raiding game was shocking, but he also retired her opponent's queen. That was unheard of. Are you sure you weren't just hallucinating? Did you hit your head? What happened? Rias questioned the girl. Kaniko's face scrunched up into a mask of concentration as she tried to remember the events from earlier. Luckily for the duo, they wouldn't have to rely on the Nekasha's memory. If you're looking for boss, he's probably in the middle of kicking some ass. Both girls turned their heads to look at the clone that had just spoken. The blonde carbon copy was perched up in the tree that Kaniko was previously leaning against. The clone was absent-mindedly tossing a kunai up into the air while looking up into the sky. Boss? Rias questioned at the blonde. The clone released a light chuckle before snatching the kunai out of the air and jumping out of the tree, landing in front of the duo in a crouch before slowly rising to his full height. Unfortunately, I'm just a clone. If you want the wreath, the clone was interrupted when a loud roar shook the forest around the trio. All of three of them turned their head towards the sound and witnessed a blue dragon rising high into the sky. The dragon continued to climb high into the sky until it was over several hundred meters high. Once the dragon seemed to reach its apex, it froze in place before exploding seconds later into a brilliant mist of water and chakra. Almi, you should probably head towards that dragon. Chances are that he was probably the cause of that. The clone finished once the jutsu had finished. Rias and Kaniko were slack-jawed at the beautiful display of water manipulation that they had just witnessed. Kaniko, while aware that her boyfriend had somehow managed to survive an encounter with the infinite dragon god, was shocked that Naruto had made such a thing. Rias, on the other hand, already had 100 different scenarios playing out in her head about what she had just saw. She had noticed that figure that had been trapped within the teeth of the dragon, and if her eyes weren't fooling her, it was Riser. Come on, Kaniko. Rias stated as she unveiled her devil wings and took off to the skies. Kaniko looked slightly surprised at the action since her king rarely made use of her ability to fly. The rook didn't question the girl though, as she summoned her own wings and followed after the heiress. About a quarter of the way through the duo's journey, they bared witness to a pretty interesting sight. The person that they were pursuing was in their sight, only a few hundred meters away. His golden blonde hair waved in the wind as he hopped from tree branch to tree branch. And directly behind him was a giant mob of flying devils that looked to be in the middle of trying to kill the boy. What in Satan's name is going on? Rias asked herself as she watched the blonde nimbly dodge attack after attack. The boy didn't even have to look back as he ducked and weaved away from the attacks that were being thrown at him. The young devil was impressed that someone managed to have such agility along with that great amount of combat awareness. That opinion was quickly wiped from the girl's mind when she watched the boy's body get consumed by a large fireball. A sigh escaped the girl's lips at the loss of a potential powerful ally as she watched the burning body fall to the ground. That disappointment quickly evolved into worry as she turned towards her rook, fearing for the girl's emotions after watching her boyfriend die so suddenly. To Ria's surprise, Kaniko didn't seem to be the least bit worried. Only a small spark of concern could be seen in the girl's eyes as she continued to watch the ongoing scene, her face emotionless as ever. Kaniko, are you okay? Rias asked her younger peer. The Nekasha looked up at her king for a brief moment before turning her head back towards the crowd of devils. I'm fine. Don't worry. Naruto is okay. The girl simply stated before pointing in front of her. Ria's eyes followed the girl's hand and was met with yet another shocking sight. The crowd of devils seemed to be frozen in shock as a yellow flash appeared in and out of their ranks. Every time the flash would appear, a dozen devils would suddenly fall to the ground with numerous injuries visible on their bodies. This process continued on for a handful of seconds until only one devil was left standing, while flying. From what Rias could remember, this devil was named Revel Phoenix and she was the younger sister of Riser. From the brief interactions that she had had with the girl, Rias had figured her to be the more quiet and well-mannered types. This didn't matter much as Naruto appeared behind the girl in a brief flash of gold. With a single chop to the neck, the girl's scarlet flame wings dispersed and she fell to the ground below. I did not know he could do that. Kaniko mumbled out, clearly shocked at the boy's display of power. Rias said nothing as she watched the blonde fall from the sky and land safely on his feet on the ground. Without any warning, the girl took off towards the blonde, leaving her rook to play catch-up once again. Blue eyes stayed locked with green as Naruto stared down Sirzechs. Standing by the devil's side was his two fellow Satans, each of them silently observing the blonde while their leader spoke with him. Lucifer A. Very creative last name for a devil hiding as a human. Naruto stated bluntly with his hand in his pockets. Sirzechs released an embarrassed chuckle at the statement, unable to really refute the blonde's point. Yeah, I was never one for creativity. I can't say the same about you though. Those symbols you used to restrict my devils were out of this world. I couldn't comprehend a single bit of it. Sirzechs said. Seraphal and Ajuka nodded their heads along to their comrade's statement. Flattery isn't going to get you out of this, Mr. Lucifer. I want to know why you, someone who claims to know and be close to Kaneko, was simply watching as she was being beaten and attacked. Naruto's tone was sharp as he addressed the elephant in the room. Ah. Well. You see. Sirzechs stumbled over his words as he tried to come up with a response to appease an obviously agitated boyfriend. Unfortunately for the Satan, he wouldn't get a chance to explain himself. I can offer an answer to that one. Ria stated as she finally approached the group. The girl was immediately put under the watch of 4 set of eyes as she walked into the clearing with a stoic Kaneko by her side. The young girl's stoicism began to melt away once she set eyes on her boyfriend. You see, my brother, who is the ruler of the underworld, decided it would be a wonderful idea to sign away his little sister in a marriage contract a month after she was born. The problem is that the person he signed her away to was an obnoxious, self-centered, perverted asshole who was only planning to use the sister as a trophy and a toy to satisfy his sexual needs. Luckily for the sister, please indicate the heavy sarcasm here, the brother, being the ruler of the underworld, managed to find an exit route for his sister. All she had to do was use her friends to battle the asshole's group of superpowered females whose only goal was to cause as much physical damage to the sister's group, which happens to include a certain Nico girl. Now I'm sure you can put together the dots of who is who. Rias finished off. Now Sirzechs was facing the scrutiny of 5 pair of eyes which included an even more agitated boyfriend now. Well, when you put it like that. I sort of sound like an asho. Sirzechs didn't get a chance to finish his statement as Naruto appeared in front of him and landed a sucker punch of the man's face, sending him tumbling backwards with a freshly broken nose. You just punched this world's equivalent to Yami. Congratulations. Kurama said sarcastically as the redhead found his balance. Naruto paid the comments no mind as he watched the Satan was clutching onto his nose while looking at Naruto. I'm not going to lie. I probably deserved that. But you have to understand, I didn't have a choice. The pure-blooded bloodline was DY. Sirzechs was interrupted once again when Naruto appeared in front of him. The blonde planted his right foot firmly in the ground before spinning 360 degrees off of that foot and landing a firm strike to the devil's cheek. The man was sent flying from his feet from a combination of the teen's natural strength and the momentum of the punch. Do you think we should help him? Seraphal asked as she watched her friend/leader fly several meters through the air only to land harshly against the ground. Maybe if I could track the boy's movement. Unfortunately he's moving too fast for me to follow, so nope. Instead, I'll just record it for research. Ajuka said as he manipulated the cameras around the campus to focus on the small clearing. By research, you mean blackmail, right? You know me too well. Back with Sirzechs, the man was staring down Naruto with his nose bloodied from the boy's assault. The blonde stood in the devil's previous position, his usual cheerful visage now an icy and harsh one. Are you finished punching me in the face? Sirzechs said loud enough for his counterpart to hear. Are you finished giving me bullshit excuses for your actions? Naruto responded. A shadow of guilt crossed the man's face due to the blonde's comment. Look, back then, I didn't realize just what my actions meant back then. Rias was newly born, the issue of purebloods was a scary concept to the underworld and I was just trying to do my job as a leader. I didn't know it would cause her and her friends all of this pain. You have no reason to apologize to me. You need to apologize to her. Naruto said while pointing towards Rias. Sirzechs turned towards his younger sister and saw the girl looking away from him, causing the man to sigh. Rias. I'm sorry. Sirzechs' voice was filled with sincerity as he addressed the younger girl. The heiress turned her gaze onto her brother, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. I'm sorry doesn't cut it. You don't realize how much this has affected me. I've spent the last couple years of my life trying to fight this. I don't even know if it's resolved yet or not. How can you expect me to just suddenly forgive you with a simple, I'm sorry? Rias all but screamed with fresh tears in her eyes. At this point, the clearing was completely silent as the brother and sister shared their moments. Sirzechs' eyes traced Rias' face and he saw the pain of a young girl that had her life from her. Her tears contained all of the pain and strife that she had been through trying to fight this engagement. The bags under her eyes, the redness of her eyes, the sagging of her shoulders. These weren't the signs of a girl who thought her brother was just being unfair. No. These were the signs of a young, emotionally drained girl who had been fighting against something that was far out of her control. I'm so sorry, Rias. I wish I could go back and change it all. I really wish I could. The Satan muttered out as he dropped his head. The duo descended into silence once again as the occupants of the clearing stood within the tense atmosphere. If I may interrupt. Sirzechs raised his head as Ajuka spoke up. Technically this is still a ratings game. And according to the rules, a victor can be declared once a king has forfeited or is no longer able to battle. And looking at Phoenix-san, I would say that he is no longer able to battle. Rias' eyes widened at what the Satan was implying. Ajuka. I don't think the Phoenix CL. Sirzechs was quickly silenced by the collective glare of all 5 other people in the clearing. The man immediately backed down and zipped his lips, clearly aware that it was now best for him to be quiet. I'm assuming that if Lord and Lady Phoenix were present and conscious, they would have no objections. But since they are not, we'll just assume that we are right in our assumptions. Ajuka could barely keep the smile off of his face as he swiped away at his tablet. Within a few seconds, a bright flash appeared in the sky as Riser's body disappeared from the dimension. Riser has been retired. This ratings game is over. Rias Gremory is the victor. Rias looked absolutely shocked at the announcement. Her eyes traveled from Sirzechs to Ajuka to Kaneko and finally to Naruto. The tears that had sprung up in her eyes earlier were back once again as she dashed towards the blonde. Before the boy could even react, the redhead's arms were wrapped around his stomach and her head buried in his chest as he cried into it. Well, this is unexpected. Kurama said from the comfort of his seal as he watched his container awkwardly comfort the crying girl. The blonde looked stuck between giving the girl a hug or simply just patting her head as his girlfriend glared at him from the side. Kurama, please help. Naruto whispered out as he felt the girl's tears begin to bleed through his shirt. The blonde was met with the amused chuckles of his tenant, causing the boy to let out a whimper. Naruto-kun. Naruto looked down and saw Kaneko standing by his side. The girl's head was down and her claws were out. Ko-chan, wait, it isn't Eve. The team didn't get a chance to explain himself as Kaneko unleashed her righteous jealous girlfriend fury on him. The blonde was forced to take off running in order to avoid the wild assault of the Nekasha, leaving an emotional but ecstatic Rias alone. Not the face, I already have whiskers. Yep. Definitely could never catch a break. That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.